Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Bald Move Pulp. This is a momentous day. This is the day we draw a conclusion to a beloved trilogy, the Lord of the Rings series by Peter Jackson. This is the installment of The Return of the King. Of course, like the Two Towers and Fellowship before, it's a commission project. This was commissioned by Epic Mouthful, who also commissioned the Two Towers. She did a back-to-back commish. I did not know this during the Two Towers, but Epic Mouthful actually is an addable address on Instagram and Twitter, and she posts. Only follow her if you want to see delicious and beautiful food. Thus, the Epic Mouthful, and a lot of especially Asian, probably Korean, if I was guessing, food. But it's lovely.
I only eat raw fish straight out of the stream, so sorry.
Well, that's that could be an Epic Mouthful too, as we see Gollum tucking into raw fish right from the stream. But no, thanks to her, she is getting a lot of pleasure at seeing everybody's positive reactions to the film. So keep that up if you want to give us some nice feedback and get some good feelings going here for the holidays. Epic Mouthful is responsible for the commission of this podcast. This is, like the others, directed by Peter Jackson, came out in 2003. Which is not like the others. But the screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson, based on the Return of the King, the third novel, the last two books combined into a third novel by J.R.R. Tolkien. It stars, I'm going to do this one more time, Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys-Davies, Bernard Hill, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, Orlando Bloom, Hugo Weaving, Miranda Otto, David Winham, Carl Urban, Andy Serkis, Sean Bean, returning for this film, Ian Holm as old wrinkly-ass Bilbo, and John Noble joining the cast as Dinathor. Of course, this is the first time we see Andy Serkis's face. This is a scene that they had no idea they'd film when they started this. Andy Serkis is just going to be the voice guy, and they fell in love with him so much that they deliberately want to insert him as a recognition for his work. So before we talk about what we think of this movie, I want to reveal some shocking information that I gathered back in the beginning of November. Just curious, because I know you and I are talking about our favorites and who likes what, and we thought we were pretty bold in our proclamation that the Two Towers would be the least favorite of the average Lord of the Rings fan. I can't tell you what the average Lord of the Rings fan will think, but I can't tell you what the average Bald Move fan thinks. I had a very representational survey. Almost 1,000 people responded to this on Twitter. Fellowship of the Ring is preferred by 36% of Bald Movers. The Two Towers, whopping 41% plurality. And then The Return of the King, distant third at 24%. I was shocked. I thought kind of Fellowship would be the consensus favorite, which it is the second favorite, and then you'd have like slight preference of Return of the King over the Two Towers, but totally wrong. What do you think about this result?
Yeah, I'm shocked by it too, because we recently did the Two Towers, and I said I thought it was probably my least favorite, and after having watched Return of the King again, and seeing them all recently, I would say probably 1, 3, 2 is my order. From favorite to least favorite. So yeah, no, I'm surprised.
I engaged a lot of people that were talking about in a thread, because there's a lot of participation on this, and it seems like, and no one will debate that, like, the story from a storytelling perspective, that maybe it's the weakest installment, it's the middle section, blah blah blah. But like, I think people, especially like if you've seen these movies dozens of times, it's about the moments. And like the Two Towers has a lot of like fan favorite moments, that's where Gimli and Legolas start the meat of their friendship. It's got Helm's Deep, which is fucking awesome.
Maybe the best Sam speech. Maybe.
Yeah, it's got a hell of a Sam speech. There's just the individual moments. The Return of Gandalf, Shadowfax, all this stuff. Just like everybody loves this stuff. Treebeard. It's got a lot of ints. If you like ints, you're not going to find him in any other part of the trilogy. So
it's true.
And that's amazing, because it's got the arguably one of the biggest climaxes of that book is torn from it and given to Return of the King. I'm talking about Shelob, of course. You say this is your second favorite of the?
I think so, yeah. that first movie is just so good because you're just put into, I don't know, you're put into the world in a way that is just so like warm and cozy and fun. And then, you know, by the time you've experienced all that, it then gets dangerous and it kind of runs the gamut. Whereas this movie is very one note. It's like, aside from the endings, right? It's all battle. It's all like fight and terror, and just like that emotion kind of runs through it is fear. And I guess there's, like I said, there's a larger gamut of emotion in that first installment.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to mark myself down as part of the crew that has a hard time picking. Like, I think this is it's like asking what your favorite chapter of a book is, you know? I can't imagine sitting down and being like, oh, I just want to watch Fellowship today. Because every single fucking time I start any one of these movies, I have to watch all of the movies.
Oh my God.
And I usually watch the extended editions, even though I think that in every case, I've seen them all now. I think in every case, the theatrical release is the stronger. I do think that there's like probably 5 or 10 minutes from each extended version that if I was Peter Jackson, I would have put in a theatrical, but like they're usually stronger. But I always like the extended because even the stuff that's kind of redundant is cool. I like to see, you know, do I want to see a redundant scene of Merry and Eowyn? Sure, hell yeah, I do. Even though it's essentially, you know, Pip and Dinathor, this hits a lot of same notes. I want to see that. I want to see that stuff. So, there were a couple. I guess there were a couple goofy scenes, especially of evolving the City of the Dead, Path of the Dead, that maybe I wish weren't even. But I don't know. I watched the extended version. I listened to Peter Jackson's commentary, and I watched a shit ton of special features. I will say that I don't have, like, I had a lot to say about the art and the filmmaking process in the first two movies. I don't have as much to say because even the extended materials feel a lot very samey. You know, like all the stuff about the bigatures, all the stuff about the forced perspectives, all the things about you know, the craftsmanship and the we went over that material, so like I don't have a lot of that stuff. What I do have is 18 pages of bullet points to talk about for the individual scenes and moments, and I woven some of that material into it, the stuff that was a little bit and I don't know, this is like almost a 4 hour and 20 minute movie. I think it's 4,000, its official runtime, the extended edition is 4,010 minutes. So it's a long one.
Okay, sure. I don't have time in the rest of my life for 18 pages of bullet points, man.
Yeah, well, you can tap out anytime you want. I'll still be here.
I will say the one technical thing that I think might have been new for this, though I'm sure they had to have done it in the Helm's Deep battle, is the crowd generation, the crowd effects. Because I remember that being like the thing that people were talking about with this Minas Tirith battle. How they had generated essentially a new type of effect, right? Like creating all of these groups of people and placing them so they didn't look all the same, and doing that with computers.
Right, you can take one orc, copy and paste him 100 times, but he's going to be realistic, like his animations will be in a like procedurally generated way, the same way like Minecraft generates terrain. It's like he's just, you know, if he's in the middle of it, he might be standing around, looking around. If he's in the edge of combat, he might be holding a shield or clubbing somebody or fleeing if they're been like that. It does work. And I guess that's what I'm talking about. Like the Battle of Minas Tirith is essentially Helm's Deep, but 10 times larger and in daylight. You know, all the things we talked about, like what helped out the helm, like maybe blurred the lines between fantasy and reality and making. I actually think Helm's Deep still is the better looking battle if you're just talking technically proficient and how rock solid all the effects are. But holy shit, another year's worth of polishing and they get to where they can stage this enormous daytime battle with like these open vistas and like crazy amounts of models and different models. Like, you know, you got to do horses and orcs and these fucking Mamacool living siege tanks, and they've got like all this stuff gets animated and looks very cool. And there's a way you can swoop around the city. Like Helm's Deep was a large part a physical location that they use like miniatures and bigatures. Where like, you know, Minas Ithil was much more just like this is whole cloth. There's not a location that looks like this with this kind of city, you know. Although I did find out in they said that a lot of Minas Tirith is spray painted white Helm's Deep. Like they reused a lot of the walls and stuff. It's like,
Why
you
not?
know, like shit, you got these huge walls. Why they're still styrofoam, you know, just spray paint them a little bit of a white color. Like I said, I don't know which one I prefer. I was watching this movie with a critical eye, especially since it's the Bald Move family least favorite. And I'm trying to think like, okay, why would that be the case? And I was also really critical of the endings because this is, you know, everybody's like, oh, this thing's got 17 endings, whatever. That's a joke. And I was watching each one. I'm like, I don't know which one I would cut though, because, you know, you've been on, whether you've been on the extended edition versus the theatrical, you've been with these people for 9 to 12 hours and you kind of want to know what's up with all of them, you know, and to really pay off all the arcs, especially since they cut the entire like epilogue that the scouring the Shire, that's like a very important like final coda for the hobbits and like them reintegrating society and applying the things that they've learned to the Shire. I still feel like it for the most part works. Like maybe there's a one or two that I'd be like, I don't know if we could have shortened this, or maybe it'd been better to end here. But like I was really trying to be critical, and I couldn't find stuff that I'd really cut. And like there's this, I saw a lot of people saying that like Fellowship is way like the one that's closer to the books and its most pure experience as a Tolkien fan. I agree with that, but a lot of the changes, like I had quibbles with the changes they made in the second book, but like the third book, I think all those changes kind of like played well together. And maybe I'm going to suggest this a Tolkien heresy along the way. Maybe another way they could have changed it to make it even better. But yeah, I don't know. If you hold a gun to my head, I think my favorite is the Fellowship. I'm with you.
Okay.
It's the beginning of things, and those things are always intrinsically interesting, and the way they build the world, and like just how marvelously efficient that script is. Even though it's not got the best effects, it's not got the biggest battles, it's not got the biggest moments, I just like it. I like it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, my biggest complaint with this movie is that it is just one big battle.
Pretty much. Yeah.
There's not a lot else going on. It's like you've got Sam and Frodo trying to get the ring to Mount Doom, and then you've got a battle at Minas Tirith. It's like, and maybe like a few minutes of preamble on that stuff, but very little. Mm-hmm. You know, it's 2 minutes into the Gandalf section of this movie, and they're already off to Minas Tirith, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, should we get into it? Should we throw this thing into the crack of Mount Doom? Yeah, still got a lot of hiking to go.
Let me talk about how successful this film was, because God, I don't know if there's been a more successful film given the budget of this thing, because this movie only had a $94 million budget, and it made. Right. I don't know how this is counting. I just saw this on Wikipedia, so I don't know if this is like. Obviously, it's going to be worldwide, but I don't know if it's to date. I don't know if it's, you know, adjusted for inflation.
Adjusted for gross, yeah.
$1.142 billion made on the back of a $94 million budget. That is a hugely successful movie.
And yet, the movie never turned a profit.
What? Wait.
If you follow the Peter Jackson lawsuits and whatnot between New Line and like all the deep lore of The Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings never made a profit, man. Just somehow all that money just went all in promotion and Shire Leaf, you know, keeping Ian McKellen and right. and old Toby.
He went through a pound a day.
Oh yeah, not ounces, pounds. He was smoking bales of that shit out of his trailer. Him and Elijah.
That's just mind-blowing to me. Like that's an incredibly successful film, and not only was it financially successful, but the awards it won. We talked about this maybe in Fellowship. No, it might have been Two Towers. How Two Towers didn't win very many awards, but goddamn, this movie won them all. It was nominated for, I think, a total of 11. It's Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Costume Design, Makeup, Original Score, Original Song, Sound Mixing, Film Editing, Visual Effects, won every single one of them. Just swept
I
the
think
Oscars.
it got no, like, it did not get any actor nominations, right?
It did not. No.
I think that's kind of a shame. I think that's kind of like, if you have a movie that's this successful and you don't want to give any credit to the people, like, I'm not saying that, like, you know, this isn't like, why isn't Norman Reedus ever win for The Walking Dead? I mean, like, you know, like, you can't find something to give to Elijah Woods, really? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one that I think is the standout, like, through all three. And if you want to, like, if you want to be like, because I think the reason this cleaned up so much is because this movie, you know, didn't do anything necessarily better. It's just, this is Hollywood saying, like, Jesus Christ, boy, you made $3.5 billion for us.
Yeah.
You put New Zealand on the map as a filmmaking destination. You've got, like, you know, we're going to give you, like, this is like a lifetime achievement award for a trilogy. Like, it's not necessarily Return of the King deserved all this stuff, but, like, in the same vein, if you can't give Elijah Wood something, because I think do you agree with this? Best performance in the series?
I think so, yeah. If I had to pick one, it's probably him.
I mean, I think Viggo should be a shoe-in best supporting because he's called to do a lot of things over the course of the trilogy as well, show a lot of range. Like, the type of archetypal masculinity that he's trying to do here is pretty tough. It's pretty tough to do, like, an Aragorn and have him still have that soul of a poet, and, you know, really into, you know, he's a killing machine, but he doesn't do it by shutting off his emotion. He does it by embracing it. It's really tricky work, and I feel like some of these people should have been acknowledged, along with the obviously impressive technical skills and the what Pete and his team of writers were able to do with the script, and Peter himself as the director. Like,
yeah,
feels kind of like a screw job not to give at least a nomination to one of these guys.
I think, like, I could also make a pretty strong case for Sean Astin. I can make a strong case for Ian McKellen, who, you know, if I were going to pick a 1 and 2, it's Ian McKellen, Elijah Wood, maybe Sean Astin a close third.
That's another good supporting. Andy Serkis. Like, I thought it would have been nice for especially the Two Towers to give him, you know, but I don't. Hollywood's sometimes not ready to, like, I don't know, a digital actor.
Yeah, what do we do with that?
Yeah, they're conservative in a lot of ways. It is amazing. It is amazing. And I remember, like, you know, this is when, like I said, Lord of the Rings in a lot of ways is kind of like my birth of, like, just loving film. And that was like the Oscar series. I never really followed the Oscars much because movies that I'm into never won. Like, you know, like, maybe they would get the technical award, you know, and Fangoria and Starlog would cover those wins. But, you know, watching it, but, like, there was a sense of, like, you know, Peter Jackson, like, look how many things has got nominated. He actually might win a few too. And they, like, swept.
Yeah.
Like, Return of the Kings kicked ass that year at the Oscars, and I remember, like, how fucking cool it was to be like, get the fat hobbit up, have him accept a gold on behalf of us all. Yeah, Pete, do it. It was a lot of good. I mean, this is a whole era of my life, is what I'm trying to say. There's like a 4 or 5 year period where, like, Lord of the Rings was the most important thing, as far as, like, culturally for me, and it was a really cool melding of, like, my teenage passions and kind of like my adult passions.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people around that time, and it's not just, you know, that this thing that you like won a bunch of awards, but it's kind of like validation for nerds in a certain way.
Yes,
like, holy shit, this is mainstream in a way that nerd stuff has not been since, like, Star Wars, right?
And even then, Star Wars, like, I feel like in the early 2000s was this kind of renaissance of, like, hey, it's kind of cool to be a nerd. We're making fat stacks programming computers. You know, like, our Dungeons and Dragons shit is got cultural attaché now. Everyone loves Star Wars and is fucking admitting it. People are playing video, like, even the people that beat me up in high school are playing video games now. Like,
right.
You know, all went to our heads, and there was a lot of unfortunate backlash to all that. But yeah,
I feel
you're
like
right.
We're still
it was
riding
like
that wave, though, with, like, the MCU and that stuff. We're still on that roll. It's not slowing down.
Yeah, Yeah, you're not wrong, and that was part of kind of like an exciting thing to see, this kind of rise of the nerd, the geek,
Yep.
in the internet age. Do we have any other preamble before we get to the talking to the film itself?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. The introduction. This is the one where they had Andy Serkis essentially depict the fall of Gollum. Gollum. Fran Walsh directed this scene in its entirety, which I thought was interesting. But I have mixed feelings about the scene because I like Andy Serkis. I think he did an amazing job, and some of the performance of what he was doing. We mentioned in our talk of the Two Towers how the Ring had become much less of a character. It was such a central character in the Fellowship, and that kind of like went away with all the Helm's Deep and Saruman and all that kind of stuff. They needed to bring that back, and this was their way to like jumpstart the Ring as a character back. Like, hey, look at what it can do to these hobbits in very little time. Like, its corrupting force starts happening right away, and I really like how they performed this. Like, Andy Serkis has got, he's playing Smeagol, and he's got his best friend Deagle, might even be brothers. And like how it all starts is kind of like a joke, like, oh, why don't you give it to me? It's my birthday. And they're kind of laughing, like kind of slapping each other's hands. And then it gets serious, and they have that driving, heart pounding, throbbing, Ring seduction music until he chokes the death out of Deagle, and then his degradation and turning into Smeagol. Mm-hmm. It's good on paper, but this is one of the worst dry for wet scenes I've ever seen filmed. This guy getting pulled under by a smallmouth bass.
Yeah.
With this giant bubble he's holding in his mouth and letting eyes on the ring is shit. It's terrible. Like it's really bad, and it's like I can't believe they got it in one take, and this is the best one or whatever. And then I think it's a really cool idea to like transition Andy Serkis from Andy Serkis to Gollum, but I don't know why they couldn't do that better. Like, if you can't sell these close-ups of him with his makeup and digitally altered eyes, like maybe you should just go wide shots of him, because I thought the wide shots of him in the cave being cursed and by man and having to be forced to go underground were good. But yeah, this intro's got some of the worst effects and some of the shakiest effects work in the trilogy. And that kind of brings it down for me.
Hilarious, because when I see this, I think, oh, that's a Peter Jacksonism. Like the underwater bass pulling. Like, there are certain moments in this where I go, oh yeah, this is that independent filmmaker part of Peter Jackson coming out. They entrusted him with several $100 million, and he's still got that in him. That shot is one of them, and I thought the transformation from Smeagol to Gollum was not terrible. I enjoyed it, like effects and all. But
I mean, there's some stuff that work, like him eating, like a close up of his nasty teeth eating that fish, iconic. I just thought some of the close ups where they're like intentionally trying to blend the cyber Gollum with the actual made up live action Andy Serkis. It didn't do it for me. And I agree. Like, I think some of that stuff, like, when Frodo fell into the water last movie, and he sees all these ghostly kind of demon things trying to tear at him, like that kind of like Peter Jackson stuff looks really good. The same way like Sam Raimi, if you watch Spider-Man, you can see a lot of those like intense like zooming smash cuts, like when Dr. Ock is attacking somebody, and it's like, oh shit, that's the stuff he's been doing since fucking
Evil Dead,
Dead, right? Or like the tracking shots on the ground getting. But now it's like, oh, well, now it's in a $100 movie and it fits. Some of this stuff, I felt like it maybe somebody should have taken aside and like, hey, look, I know you like the low budget wet toilet paper shit, but can we, we actually have $100,000 that we can spend on this 3 seconds. Maybe we should cut loose with some of it.
For sure. For sure.
On the other hand, maybe they actually kind of ran out of money, on some of this stuff. And like, it's like, well, you ran out of time, you ran out of money, and it's like, this is as good as we can get right now. We're gonna do the Fellowship leading up to Sam and Frodo in our discussion here. So the movie begins proper with centered on the Fellowship getting back together. Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are riding up to Orthanc, where Saruman's holed up, and Merry and Pippin are there feasting and smoking. One of my favorite scenes. I fucking love them busting Gimli's balls, and John Rhys Davis' performance of him like thinking about the salted pork, like you can see him like slavering and his mouth watering.
Yeah.
The extra scene. So you didn't see this in the theatrical, but it's just a lot. Saruman actually shows up. They have a confrontation with him.
Right.
And I actually think they needed. I think it's a weakness of the theatrical edition that they don't deal with Saruman. That Gandalf essentially says, just let him stay in his tower and sit on it. Sit and spin. Fuck him.
Sure.
I actually like this, and especially if you're not going to do the scouring, which is how he gets disposed of in the book. This is a pretty fitting in. Saruman's big power was his words of wisdom and the way he could like pick you apart and manipulate you. And he tries it to different ones. He tries to talk shit to everybody, and he can't. He's got too many enemies, and the one that he thinks is solid in his corner, Wormtongue, is the one that ultimately betrays him. I actually really like that, and I think the theatrical cut loses some of that intensity.
Sure.
And it's also got some of the peak Christopher Lee, his mocking Gandalf when he's Gandalf is essentially asking him to surrender, and he's like, "Oh, you want the keys to Orthanc? Well, maybe the keys for Barad-dûr too, along with the crowns of the 7 kings and the staffs of the 5 wizards." And he just goes on, and this almost direct quote of Tolkien, and he loves it so much, and he gets just completely cut out. The biggest Tolkien fan on the production gets completely cut out of the 3rd movie. It's not right. That's not right, Peter. You fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of cuts that I'm going to talk about maybe making, but that's wild to me that they would have Christopher Lee on set, film a whole bunch of stuff with him, and then just not use it. I assumed watching this theatrical cut that they just didn't ask him back, and it was he's only going to be in it for a minute, and it's not worth the money that he wants. Let's just not do it. But
if I recall correctly, he was kind of pissed about it too.
Yeah, I bet.
There's also this famous story because Wormtongue stabs him in the back, and Pete, I guess, was to go give him direction for his death scene, and Christopher Lee kind of drew himself up and was like, "Peter, do you know the sound a man makes when his lungs are punctured by a knife?" And Pete's like, "No, I don't." And Christopher Lee's like, "I do," because he's like, I guess there's this whole mythology about Christopher Lee where he served in the kind of secret service and the precursor to the SAS and did a lot of commando shit in World War II.
Wow.
I don't know how much truth it is, because there's a lot of dudes that kind of in this profession that kind of storytell, and I did some digging, and there's doubt on some of this stuff, but it's a cool story, and it makes Christopher Lee seem like a really scary badass, for sure. And also the other thing that there's this thing that kind of comes out of nowhere, where Theoden has this inferiority complex about his ancestors, he's never been worthy of them, and it starts here because Saruman uses, it's kind of he uses his wizard words one last time to implant this idea in Theoden that you're the lesser son of worthier sires, that really he can't get it out of his mind, and it's something that motivates him throughout the rest of the movie. And I felt you could give Christopher Lee his due, get this early thematic arc for Theoden set up, and they just hustle past it in the movie.
Definitely sheds a little more light on why he would change his mind about going to help. Was it Gondor? Later in the movie, because I assumed it was something sacred about the torches that they light, the beacons. And if you don't respond to those, you're a real dick bag.
That's that. Yeah.
Okay, that's part of
that
it.
There.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I guess it works without it, but that would have put a little more light onto it. And then when he's dying at the end, he specifically mentions that, right? Now I can go face my ancestors and not be ashamed of it, essentially.
It's a nice character arc.
Yeah,
right?
Would have been.
Yeah. And I think it still works. It's just it comes out of nowhere, because Jesus Christ, you defended your people against this this unprecedented orc horde at Helm's Deep, and you're still feeling inferior. It feels more your words are poison, an echo from that. Saruman concentrated can erode your confidence. And what does that mean? So you have this wounded masculinity. Would it, it's I just think it's interesting, and they didn't really set it up properly in the theatrical release. But the important part is Pippin picks up this Palantir, which is going to kick off the next part of the quest, and they go back to the capital city of the Rohan, Edoras, and they've got this post-war feast, and they're hailing the victorious dead. There's an extended scene of like Gimli and Legolas getting into a drinking game, because the joke there is the elves are not affected by alcohol, and Gimli's trying to drink this guy under the table, and Orlando's doing this shaky line read of like, I think I do feel something. I feel like a numbness into my fingertips after he's drank like 50 gallons of beer, and then Gimli's like, I knew the elves couldn't hold their liquor, and he passes out. It's why it's 30 seconds, Pete. What this you can't throw another Gimli funny scene in here. They also like there's a lot of stuff that didn't work in the second movie. Doesn't work in this movie. Like I think Aragorn and Eowyn. How much of this is her offering him his cup and him rejecting it in the theatrical release?
I don't think so. I don't remember it.
I thought it was, because it kind of like makes it even seem more sad, because Aragorn's definitely kind of like taking it out of politeness and doing that as a performance, and Eowyn and Theoden are like, Theoden's like, oh yeah, he's such a catch. What a fucking king of man, way to go. Like they unironically are like, oh yeah, matchy match. You guys are gonna have king babies pretty soon. And of course that's just not going to happen. So
no, I felt even more strongly after this movie that you could have cut at least the love story part of that, if not the Eowyn entirely. But I there are reasons to keep her around, I guess.
Oh, for sure. And that's one of the greatest arcs in the book. You got to have Eowyn, but like matching her up with Aragorn, I don't know. There's another extra scene where he finds her like sleeping in the Great Hall in the fires, and she's shivering, and he covers her up, and it's like a walk back of what he just did. Like it makes Aragorn feel like he's kind of friend zoning her. Like, I kind of might like, it's like, you're such a great girl and things, but I kind of married, I kind of like, sworn to this elf girl, but if I wasn't, it's a little, like, Jesus, I my feelings weren't hurt, but they're kind of getting there.
Yeah.
And then like Pippin gets out of bed to go sneak the Palantir. I love Ian McKellen's performance of Gandalf asleep with his eyes open.
It's horrifying. It's gross. I don't like it.
It's a great detail from the books that Gandalf sleeps with like his eyes open, and then like he gives this performance of Gandalf returning to consciousness, like he goes from like eyes focused kind of like to like being aware of it, and it's great. I love it, and the fucking pandemonium that's this Hobbit is causing in all three films. He does it. This is the last time he kind of steps on his dick. Because that's his arc in this movie, growing the fuck up. He, and Aragorn comes, he tries to grab the ball. He's the king of man. He can't even tame this flaming ball, and it's got to be Gandalf throwing his underwear over it, essentially.
What? I didn't get that it was his underwear, but okay.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. And there's a couple. There's a few last bits of simple trickery that they do, like when Gandalf is cradling Pippin's face. Those hands that there's like the 7'6" tall guy named Big Paul.
Oh boy.
That does a lot of like, he does a lot of the big people performances, and that's his hands cradling, his giant hands cradling this, this guy's scale model to Big Paul. Like, what do you think? It's not, I can't remember this. It's not Dominic Monaghan.
Billy Boyd.
Billy Boyd.
Yeah.
Billy Boyd is a scale hobbit to this guy, so it all looks great. And I guess Ian McKellen was like standing over his shoulder, like, "No, hold him this way, move your thumbs." And this guy, direct like a puppet. Big Paul is getting puppeted by this very regal gay man to tell him about how to move your hands and stuff. But they established in the scene that, like, the thing that really Sauron fears is all the people of the land coming together. And the rest of the movie is essentially them faking a big last stand to give Frodo the chance to slip through undetected to Mordor.
So this is a scene where they figure out that, Sauron is going to attack Minas Tirith with his guys.
Combined might.
Right. And they both they run off to protect Minas Tirith. So Gandalf goes off in one direction. He sends Aragorn off in another. And I thought this was like a redundancy where like, oh, if we get stopped on the road, at least you'll make it there to warn them. It comes back in a different way by the end of this. But
yeah,
that's kind of how I read it the first time.
Yeah, and they also like I like the tension between Merry and Pippin because Merry grew up a lot in the first book and the first movie, and like Pippin's lagged behind him. He kind of had a little bit of a moment where, you know, he brought the Ents to war.
Yeah.
But he's still not taking this seriously, and Merry is, and he's very frustrated. And they, you know, like Pippin's wanting reassurance. So like, hey, we're gonna be in, and Merry's like, I don't fucking know, man. This is like some serious shit. And I really like that. Like you know, this is kind of like Pippin's innocence being torn from him as Gandalf forces him to ride the Gondor with him so he can keep an eye on him, make sure his mental facilities don't get further corrupted. Yeah. There's this side scene of Arwen leaving for the Grey Havens. Do you get all this? What's going on here?
Not in particular. I kind of wrote Arwen mostly off, and I think that's fine. You can.
Okay.
In this movie, who cares, really?
It's too bad because I think there's a way they could have brought her back, but like she's you're supposed to understand that like all of Elrond's children are given this choice to choose between being they're half elf and they're half human, and they can choose whether they're going to have a mortal life as a human or to be an elf, and that's like a choice they can make at any time in their life. It's irrevocable once they make it. She decides to be a human and essentially binds her soul to Middle Earth. So as Middle Earth starts to sicken and go into darkness, she does too. And Elrond knows that, you know, no matter what happens on Middle Earth, like eventually she'll die and he's going to live forever, like, you know, as an elf. And he's trying to protect her. You know, I feel very kinship with this. This is very, you know, I'll do anything to save your immortal soul, you know, kind of thing. I'll lie to you. I'll trick you. I'll manipulate you. But she's the one that makes him. You know, she runs home like because she sees on the way to the Grey Havens because she's going to. The elves can go sail to this western shore that's unreachable. You know, there's a lot of really complicated lore here that goes into Silmarillion shit. Like the Earth used to be flat, and then men fucked up by sailing to the western shores where they weren't supposed to be, and it pissed off God, so he made the world a globe. But the elves could still
what?
Yeah,
why does
right?
that matter?
Well, because the elves still stayed on that holy plane. So like when the world became a ball, it like the way they describe it is the elves have a technique of sailing straight. Like you're no longer, you don't like boats follow the curved surface of the earth, but the elves can sail in this one direction. They go straight into this higher dimensional so they can still access this kind of heavenly realm, and men can't.
Is this extended edition stuff? Because this
is like way back in the deep parts of mythology. But that's what Arwen's doing. She's going to the Grey Havens where she can sail west into Elvish heaven, essentially.
The land of
and
the
on the
Undying?
way there,
Is that?
Huh?
Is it the land of the Undying? Okay.
The Undying Land. Did they call it that? I can't. Like sometimes
Maybe, or
sometimes
Undying
the Game
Lands.
of Thrones. The Game of Thrones terminology has gotten in here, and like, wait, is that? But no, I think you're right. They call it the Undying Lands. There's a million words for it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think her like being the impetus to reforging Aragorn's sword is a strong change from the books, because in the books I think they just reforge it at the Council of Elrond. Like, here's your sword, go beat Sauron. This feels like, you know, a big step, and her demand, like, you know, you lied to me. It was all true what you said, but you didn't say that there was actually going to be life and a potential for a child and love and all this other stuff. And Elrond's like, yeah, you got me. Here's another Tolkien heresy. This elfin blacksmithing looks stupid. Like, I get the elves are like, you know, prim and proper and clean, but there's like, I don't buy that these guys are hammering steel, man. Like, an elfish blacksmith should still have a big ass hammer and a big ass hammer arm, and like, you know, like be slamming that stuff. This is like a performative tinkering they're doing to reforge the sword it's bad. I know you had blacksmiths in this movie, and you could have had a really cool elvish blacksmithing scene. You didn't do it. You let me down a little bit. Tolkien heresy #2.
Are they even
There's
sweating?
going to be at least 6, huh?
Are they even sweating? I didn't see any sweat.
Maybe they don't sweat. Maybe their faces aren't covered in soot, but I should buy that they're actually welding pieces of metal together, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't buy it.
It seems risky to reforge this sword. Like everything that Sauron has touched has been possessed by him and like taking over the mortal minds, right? I felt like this was a risk, like not knowing the lore behind this sword or anything. I'm like,
the sword that
really
cut his finger.
Yeah, I'm not so sure you want to do this.
Ruined by his touch. He shattered it, and then the shard of it cut his finger.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
It is weird that like no one worries about like, yeah, okay, I've never actually thought of this, but thank you as a Tolkien outsider. It is weird that like in this book, like rings are all the time corrupted and this, that, and the other. But like you find a sword in an evil grave that's protected by vengeful spirits, no problem. That's going to be a super sword. You find swords that are in like a goblin horde for the last 3,000 years. Blow the dust off of them, wipe the human blood, and it's still going to be the goblin cleaver. You know, like swords never get corrupted. They're the one thing. That like have pure souls, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the elf's dainty blacksmithing. So Gandalf then rides to Minas Tirith, the capital city of Gondor. I fucking love the design of this city. This is like
before we get there, like he takes Shadowfax, right? And he's like, show us what you got, Shadowfax, which doesn't he say like, I don't know, just show us the meaning of haste. Show us the meaning of haste.
I can't don't remember if that's this movie or the last movie, but yeah, if you heard it's probably in this movie.
Well, it's definitely this one. And I'm thinking this is it. This is your moment to shine, Shadowfax. Show me what makes you the Lord of Horses. And I think it's either that he can run a lot or he can run on water.
I mean, the ability for a horse to run at full gallop infinitely would actually be a huge advantage.
It absolutely would.
I see what you're saying.
I wish I knew more about this Lord of Horses.
And the counterpoint is like, sometimes when you try to make people look artificially running fast, it looks goofy. But I feel like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they figured that out.
Oh, yeah.
Like when Captain America and like Black Panther are running 60 miles an hour, it just fucking looks like dudes are running 60 miles an hour. And I know there's a complicated like pulley system and like some visual trickery and some blur effects they do it. But like it would be interesting to see that applied to horses, because I kind of with you, I would love to see like this horse spirit go like to hyperspace. Like what would that look like? And I'm afraid it would come across Twilight rather than Marvel Cinematic Universe at this era, but
probably
he can ride across water, runs at a full gallop, never tires.
Okay. I'm just curious.
I'm making that up. I don't know about him. I don't know. Like I said, he's just an exceptionally swift, powerful horse in the books. It's not like he opens up a time gate and runs across a rainbow bridge or anything.
Fair.
But yeah, I love the Minas Tirith design. In the book, it's described as this like fantastical, like impossible structure, and they found a way to just make it look like it's like simultaneously carved out of the mountain, but also like very exquisitely crafted, and it's beautiful and it's gleaming when the sun hits it, just like Boromir said, when you come home and you see the sun hits the banners just right, and it's chef's kiss. I like the Gandalf meeting Dinathor, and there's all this buildup of like him trying to tell Pippin, who is a fool, how to act, and he's like, well, don't talk about this and don't talk about this. In fact, you know what? Don't talk at all. And Dinathor, like, is like, he starts off the conversation all J'accuse with Gandalf about getting his boy killed, and Pippin jumps up and pledges fealty. And I love the moment of Gandalf like kicking him, like, get the fuck, what are you doing? What did we just talk about? It's great. What do you think about John Noble as Dinathor?
I don't know what to think about Dinathor. Like if I had a little more backstory on Dinathor, if I knew why he was sort of this mad steward of Minas Tirith, maybe I would like it more. But as is, I think it's a good performance, but I just don't know enough about the character.
I was watching because I was doing a lot of research and I got down this like YouTube hole, and I came across this professor of linguistics that studies Tolkien, and he has this question and answer series, and he put right at this point that Theoden is like the language of the Rohan is essentially Anglo-Saxon, like old, like literally old English. It's not an invented language. It's just, Tolkien, using old English. And Theoden means king. And Theoden's story was a man who's been corrupted by lies and rumors and fear, and until he's paralyzed, he can't make decisions, and him regaining his strength and becoming noble. And Dinathor, this guy pointed out, is an invented language. This is like a language of like these high elves and Numenorians that Tolkien just invented, and he used that mechanic to syllabically reverse Theoden. Theoden, Dinathor.
Okay.
And that, like, you're supposed to understand that Dinathor is like the reverse. Like, we're seeing when Dinathor what Theoden already went through. These lies that Sauron has been issuing. Like, there's hints that like he has access to a Palantir that he's tried to use because he thinks, and it's Sauron's corrupted his mind. And now, like, it's, hey, look, humans are up against the wall. It's a really tough situation, but he is just completely given over to fear and madness in the exact same way that we encountered Theoden. I never had thought about that before, and like how he uses that inversion of Theoden to Dinathor, but it makes a lot of sense, and it makes him more compelling. Like, the distress that we're seeing Gondor go through is the same one that Rohan already went through, and they're all declining, whereas the Rohans are kind of like, and the Rohan kind of saves the day.
It's not just the single, bringing the army in to save them. It's also saving them from the madness, right?
Right, but it also required a little bit of, because of both of these things, the fact that both of these men have fallen into these lies and despair and like this policy of isolationism. There's this long list of hurt and grievances, like like Theoden last film is like Gondor. Where was Gondor when this happened? Where was Gondor? And Gondor is the same way, like fuck Rohan, and they just want to come in and take our power and all this kind of stuff. So neither one of them will call for the other for help. Yeah. And Gandalf goosing it along is like one of the high points of this film,
for sure.
But I think John, like the Peter Jackson talked about a lot how he's got the Shakespearean background, and that he gave a lot of takes. Like, he would give like Peter Jackson like half a dozen takes, and they would go for like, he'd be like start at like idling, and then he'd go full on like the Mad King Shakespeare. And Peter Jackson said, I found myself always going to like the deep end of his performance,
of course,
because it really got that kind of madness. So because I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, is this guy like chewing the scenery a little bit? But it seems like it's exactly what Peter Jackson wanted from him.
I think it works. Like, it definitely conveyed that madness, even though I didn't have the backstory, the information on why he was mad.
Yeah,
and there's something also subtler might not have done that for me.
And there's also like it is endless fat, like for a hardcore Tolkien geek, like the fact that like Denethor's not sitting on the throne. You'll notice there's this giant throne that the king sits on, but the kings have been gone for like hundreds, if not thousands of years. Now you've got this line of stewards. It used to be like the major domos, the maesters to the kings. They have this little tiny little throne at the foot of the stool that he sits on. But it's been so long that they're like, hey, we've been running this place. We've been defending the last kingdom of men for a whole age now. Fuck your kings. We don't want them back. So there's like a little bit of that kind of like threat and jealousy now that he knows Gandalf is here, and he's killed his son, his heir, as far as he's concerned, his only son, and he's now moving this other guy to supplant him, and it's pretty good stuff.
Can you shed a little bit of light on that? Like, why does Denethor hate Faramir so much and love Boromir? Like, did the movies tell us this? Why he dislikes Faramir?
Yeah, there's an extra scene that I'm gonna that I think it's an extra scene that has Faramir showing like giving Pippin his old clothes, essentially, like he used to, his old armor and clothes. Pippin's wearing, just like Merry was wearing Theoden's old armor, Pippin's wearing Faramir's old armor. And there's a scene where he says, Boromir is exactly like my father. Like they're a spitting image in terms of strength and like kind of like their bullheadedness and their power and their leadership. And like he is just not that. He's still he's a competent swordsman and a good leader of men. He's just not at that level. He has other qualities. He's more thoughtful, more introspective, more willing to like call on others for aid. And I think that's one of the things Tolkien's comparing and contrasting, the fact that like Denethor only knew one way to be a man and Faramir wasn't that. So and then you all the poison and corruption of Sauron's thoughts kind of like has twisted him in that direction.
Okay.
Man, there's a couple other extra scenes that like I don't think you can put in the movie, but like there's a scene of like Gandalf explaining to Pippin about like Gondor, like a real 2-minute like, hey, here's Gondor. They used to be this great city. It was ruled over by kings, and now it's been the Stewarts. And they had this white tree that was holy to them, and now it's dying. And there's this the king returns. Maybe he can bring it back to life, and Gondor will flourish again. But like I like it because I'm a lore hound. But
I thought it worked fine without that. Like the Pippin has that vision of the tree, and by the time you get to Minas Tirith and see that tree, you're like, oh, okay, no, I understand. Like he was seeing that's the part of Minas Tirith he was seeing, and those dots are connected well enough.
Yeah. There's a scene of like that's in the movie of Pippin worrying about like, this thing I pledged, it's a ceremonial position, right? And Gandalf kind of like, well, as he does in a lot of the movies, he's now lays the stakes out that like, hey, this isn't just orcs we're facing this horde of this mumakills, these mammoth elephants, all these men that Sauron has twisted with lies and manipulations. Pirates are going to be coming. Peter Jackson is a pirate captain, which I always think is funny. He's belching on a ship. And they really build up. Here's the other, I guess it's a slight flaw in the film that they build up this huge, like Gandalf versus the Witch King. Holy shit! It's a championship bout. It's going to be these it's going to be like the Balrog Part 2. Did you get that? Like when you're watching this, that like this is going to be some shit.
No, and then it definitely never happens.
Oh man, it's because they said, and then like in case you forgot, he says, "Hey, this guy he's the guy that stabbed Frodo on Weathertop," and then there's a scene later where the Morgoth, the orc general, is saying, like, hey, I can deal with all this, but what do we do about the White Wizard? And the Witch King's like, I will break him. And I'm like, I feel like a reasonable person could be looking forward to like the Balrog 2 Electric Boogaloo, and they're going to get disappointed because that doesn't actually happen at all in the theatrical version. And it's just a very brief scene in the extended version. I think my favorite scene in the trilogy all up is lighting the beacons. That is such a fucking cool concept, like this long range medieval call, like distress signal that can be triggered on either side. And the idea of these guys living on this mountain for like, like it's like a submarine duty, or it's like like an Antarctic post. Like you might go there for a year.
Yeah.
And you're stuck with this dude eating salted pork, staring at this thing, waiting for it to catch fire. And like, it's not been lit for hundreds of years.
That's the thing. Like, I think this immediately took me back to Game of Thrones, where you've got the Night's Watch and they're up at the wall and they're supposed to be doing their fucking job, right? Manning these castles, keeping them maintained. All that shit has gone to seed. Like they've just completely let that wall fall apart. There's hardly anybody manning it anymore. Nah, not in Lord of the Rings, man. These guys take their job seriously.
Damn straight, because they know there's goblins on the other side of these mountains. It's not true, theoretical for them.
Fair.
But this whole sequence is like it's like concentrated hope injected into the veins of the cinematic, and it always gets me like emotional, like because Howard Shore's going for fucking broke on the score of these sweeping helicopter shots of like these like this like extended beacons all across the land, and then like like Aragorn's like giving up and he's just smoking his pipe watching this thing, and like against all odds it lights, and he runs in, and that's the thing that breaks King Theoden. Like you can see him thinking like, those fucking Gondorians, they didn't help me out. but he can't. He's you know, like Gondor calls for aid, Rohan will answer. Like I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. It's great. It's great. And then like I also like there's these like just like I said, I've watched this thing like 100 times. Like a lot of times I'll rewind it and watch it a couple times just to get everything. And I even like Dinathor's kind of like retreating behind the, like, you know, pulling the blind shut, like you won this round, Gandalf. I fucking love everything about it.
Yeah.
The next scene is like, so we just got some liquid hope, but now we're gonna mainline despair for a good hour of this movie. They got the invasion of Ausgiliuth. This is the satellite outpost right outside of Minas Tirith, guarding the crossing of this river.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous?
Yeah. They're talking about, oh, we can't hold them. The city's lost. What fucking city, man? You're talking about a stack of stones at this point.
Sure. But it's a defensible position. You want that river and that town between you and the armies of darkness, I think.
I think we can stop calling it a city at the very least.
It's the ruins of a city.
Yes.
And Boromir worked very hard right before this movie started to take it back. And now, Faramir's fucked it all up. But they invent this Gothmog guy, this albino kind of elephant man orc, because Peter Jackson thought that the audience needed, you know, they've always had, like, you know, they had the head orc. They've always had some kind of like central figure of evil to kind of concentrate on, and they invented one for this movie. I thought he's pretty cool.
No, I thought it was awesome. I can't tell, is he the voice of Dr. Claw? Because goddamn, he sounds exactly like Dr. Claw.
He's very
in so many scenes.
Yeah, right. He's very, very much that.
But I definitely liked him. I thought it was smart to have like some organizing force of these armies, right? It makes them more intimidating, because if you don't have any organization, you're not an army. You're just a bunch of dudes with swords. So I needed that from the bad guys.
There's also a cool production note that, like, I guess most of J.R. Tolkien's family is kind of hands off on this, but one of his great grandsons, Roy, reached out and said, like, I really think that you're doing an amazing job on this, and like you're doing my great grandfather proud. And Peter invited him, this guy who's handing out spears to like the Rangers of Osgiliath. That's Tolkien's great grandson, Roy Tolkien.
Nice.
That's pretty fucking cool, man. I think that's neat. But this is a route. You're supposed to understand. I mean, I think you understand, like, this is like, they have no business being in the city. There's no hope of holding it. It's overwhelming odds. Like, retreat is what you have to do, and it sets up, you know, Dinathor kicking Faramir into teeth. I always thought I did like some of this stuff, like the fell beasts, like really tearing into these humans, these men. I'd like that. I like Gandalf riding, like, you know, hell bent for leather to save him with his magic staff. And then there's a lot of exciting dynamic horse riding. Like, you know, you can Peter Jackson's on a Jeep behind him and they're going like 40 miles an hour, tearing as like, there's this really cool scene of like Gandalf on Shadowfax kind of like falling in line with the rest of the guys retreating to Minas Tirith. That is fucking cool. That's when Gandalf gets the update about, Frodo, you know, that like Frodo's heading to Cirith Ungol. Oh my God, that's bad. What does it mean? And you got this massacre. So like Dinathor, this is John Noble's like standout scene. Having lunch, he's just ordered his son to his death, and he's having this lavish Thanksgiving style lunch feast with bursting tomatoes and, like, you know, juices running down his chin like blood, and Pippin is being forced to sing this god awful mournful song from the Shire. It's another, like, it's another great moment. And
it's all intercut with Faramir's guys being cut down.
And like all the like, I always think like that's like, what would it be like to be ordered into a doomed battle, and not even for like, hey, look, you know, you guys are all going to die, but it's going to save 10,000 people, like something like a Chernobyl. Like, yeah, you're going to go in this radiation pool and die, but you're going to save like a continent's worth of people. Like, no, this guy is just out of his mind and doesn't have the confidence even of his son, who's going to lead us into battle. And it's a literally doomed charge. And they really sell that story. It's like every time they cut back to Osgiliath, there's like more orcs, and they're all bending their arrows back, and fuck, man. And And just the way he filmed like Dinathor eating, it's very much like that painting of like Saturn devouring his son. You know, like that's literally what we're watching here. Him destroying his unloved son.
Yeah.
Then for another shot of hope, we go back to Rohan. There's this shot that I think is amazing of this guy hammering the gong at Edoras, like the alarm bell, and every time he strikes it, like the sun hits the scene just so that it makes like this sunburst behind him. And it's all a practical effect, and it's all just the lining up the lighting and everything. But it's just like, God damn, what it's one of those, another one of those remarkable shots in this film. You got Merry pledging a sword to Theoden because there's a nice little kind of mirroring with the two hobbits, and they're getting into the war proper, which sets up another theme. This is another echoed theme in Theoden, or not Theoden, Tolkien's work, that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, you know?
Sure.
Like Merry, Pippin, Eowyn, the hobbits in general are going to distinguish themselves, and these mighty men of valor are going to essentially be a distraction for the little people to do the work. And it's like, Eowyn's got some good lines here. Like, she tells her brother, his brother's dismissive about, what these hobbits can do in battle. And she's like, why can't he fight for those that he loves? Mm-hmm. And she's essentially talking for herself here too.
Exactly. Yeah. Why can't the women fight? They were locked up in the Helm's Deep battle, in the keep or whatever, and hid away, right? Put swords in their hands, let them fight.
Yeah.
They've got just as much at stake here.
Yeah, and the Eomer's sitting there like, war is the province of men, and he's talking to a woman who's going to kill in single combat like this unkillable death beast, and going to be aided and abetted by her little hobbit friend. It's one of the great arcs of the books. And I really like her and Merry. There's a lot of extended scenes of them fucking around in the extended edition, which is cool. And I love how she grabs him, like when he thinks he's been told by his king that like, I don't need you. This is not, just get away. And she picks him up, and the two outcasts kind of ride in a battle together.
Yeah. In the theatrical cut, that's a little less, I didn't buy it quite as much. Just because they only have one scene together. It's the one where she's like giving him armor, right? Putting the armor on him. And like, I guess, this is in as much as her and Aragorn forged some kind of romance in a couple of scenes where they just make eyes across the room at each other. I guess that was the scene where her and Merry become like the ultimate of friends here, and she's willing to scoop him up and take him into battle. It's a little thin, but like, I understand you're doing so much other stuff.
Yeah, in my ultimate cut, we'd way scale back to Aragorn, Eowyn romance, and save time for the Merry,
for sure.
Eowyn like comrade in arms bonding. But this is a great scene. It's got a lot of like really cool effects, like seeing 6,000 horses. It's another kind of like showcase for this massive system. It's not even a battle. It's just Theoden inspecting his camp, and they're like saying like, and this looks like an impressive number, a big army, but they're all saying that like, well, it's not enough, which sets up the choice that Aragorn's going to have to make to challenge, go back and, bring these dead guys along for the thing. This is another kind of deep lore for Peter Jackson. This location, the Paths of the Dead, that those kind of like stark white, bone white canyons, is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the guy to do it, is the initial location that like Brain Dead, one of his first schlocky zombie movies, that's like where they did, like the scientists are investigating some kind of site and they find the ancient evil that turns everybody into zombies there.
Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that I knew that off the top of my head. I looked it up though. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that that's a nice little kind of like melding of his past and his current. I guess it's still 20 years in his past now. Mm-hmm. But that's cool. Aragorn gets this premonition of Arwen dying, and Elrond shows up to deliver him his new sword, Anduril, the Flame of the West, forged from the shards of Narsil, which means the red and white flame symbolizing the sun and the moon, the chief weapons of mankind versus the darkness. I think this should be Arwen. Fuck, fuck this guy being the message boy. It should be Arwen. Like, they should give Arwen and Aragorn one last kind of moment to solidify their relationship, which really has been an afterthought since the first movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he thought he might piss off Tolkien fans by changing things too much, but dude, you're pretty far off the page in some of this movie.
Oh yeah.
I think it'd been night and day improvement. Just speaking for myself. I don't know, maybe it also, but it's all, I can see them also being like, well, it'd be awkward because we've done this thing with Eowyn. Well, fuck all that shit. Get all that stuff out of there. Bring Arwen back. Have her, challenge her man to go take his destiny and to buck up and take the sword and kick some ghost ass. And they don't. They let Elrond do it, and it's weaker than it might otherwise be.
Yeah, I agree. And it's hard to defend the idea of like, oh, we don't want to change too much from the book when they change the entire fucking ending of this thing, like tone and everything, like and message and everything. It's like they really changed the ending of this from what I read of this movie and the trilogy.
They just omit I mean, it is the exact same.
Well, it's the
just
part that has the statement about evil. Like, it's...
Yeah.
God, they take that whole thing out, and it's just like happily ever after. It's so saccharine compared to the book, but...
Yeah, after you fight the war, you come back and your own country is kind of fucked up and, you don't like it and it's been taken over by corrupt men. And then, Sauron's gone, but you still got bastards running things.
Right.
What do you do?
It's an eternal battle against evil in the books. Here, it's just like, oh, we did it happily ever after. So plus, to like say that, oh, we don't want to change these particular things in the books or like, really? You don't? Because you changed a lot.
And it's such a great, I don't know how you do it because the movie would be 5 hours long to come back and have the Scouring the Shire. But there's some of my favorite moments of the book because it's all about these hobbits. And some of them have been physically transformed. Like Merry and Pippin are noticeably larger than hobbits. But there's a scene where because they drank that draught we talked. Did I remember to talk about that they drank this magic water and
it made them bigger? I don't remember.
Yeah, like
that.
several inches. Like they're like a head taller than your average hobbit and stronger too.
Huh.
But they come riding back, and these are fucking military veterans, and the Shire has been taken over by men like bullies that Saruman's hired, and these guys ride up on their ponies, and these men are like, these uppity hobbits, we're going to put them in their place. And there's a scene where it's like some of the smarter men are looking like these hobbits there's something about these bullies are not used to seeing hobbits with such fell faces and bright gleaming steel because they've got like magic swords, impenetrable armor. They've been taking down cave trolls, and you're a drunken fat ass fool. You're gonna take these guys they're not gonna stand for this shit, and they just run them out of the town. It's great. And the movie doesn't do it because how could it possibly?
How could it possibly so much
do
time?
It? Yeah. But it'd be a damn shame. Instead of making The Hobbit, honestly, a feature length Scouring the Shire, that would have been the play. If you want to do that, and then a Hobbit, maybe 2 Hobbits. If you want 3 movies, there you go. That's how you make
a Hobbit. Let's stick to a Hobbit.
A Hobbit. A Hobbit. But it's funny because so Aragorn leaving sends the camp into a tizzy, because the people like love and respect their king, but Aragorn's the hero of Helm's Deep, he's the one that brought the elves, he's the one that brought Gandalf on the 5th day, and I love it because Theoden gives like the opposite of an inspirational speech. He's like, no, we don't have enough men, we don't have enough horses, and we'll all die, but that's what we must do. And the men are kind of, even in the universe, the men are kind of like, what? Wait, hopeless. I don't know that I would have got out of bed for this battle, but
it's a contrast between this and the battle that they have later that's hopeless, right? Where they attack the Black Gate and they're like, well, we're all gonna die here, but we're gonna buy Elijah Wood some time to throw that ring in the mountain. That feels like a hopeless battle in cause of something. This just feels hopeless.
But that's the thing, essentially all these battles are essentially like you can stay here and die later when Sauron comes and takes Gondor and eventually gets to you, or you can take a chance to stand together.
Yeah.
But the Paths of the Dead, the City of the Dead, I think is great. This scared the shit out of me when I watched it because I was not used to seeing horrific special effects and ghostly things. I was still very afraid of these things back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. Like I love how like Aragorn kind of charges right in, and Legolas does too. And there's this great thing from Gimli where he's like, "Oh, I can't believe that there's a place in the ground where a dwarf won't go, but a man and an elf goes in." And like he's kind of shamed into it. And in the books, like Legolas just he's not afraid of ghosts at all. He's like, why would I fear these washed out shades of men or something? Because he's like, you know, elves are like essentially half spirit creature anyway. I will say that the extended edition, there's a lot of ghost stuff. And it gets pretty Ghostbustery. Like there's like these will-o-wisp ghosts that are like going inside Gimli's beard, and he's like trying to blow them away. And it's like, it really takes away from the overall effective tone of these dead. Because I think, what do you think of the design of the dead here? Like how they kind of shift.
I can't help but see these things and think Pirates of the Caribbean. Like that's all I'm thinking of when I see these now. And I don't know which came first.
Pete Jackson actually talked about this. He said that they had already filmed all this, but because of the long post-production, Pirates came out, and he went to the theaters like, oh, I can't wait. And he's like, oh shit.
Oh no.
Because like, it's not like the constant like hologram, but like, yeah, shifting from like dead flesh to like, it's kind of what they did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's what he was afraid of.
I mean, it doesn't make it worse. That's what it reminds me of.
It's kind of like that sickly, like they've got this palette of like this like the sickly green glow that shows kind of like sorcery and stuff. And I like how it's like, you can see it's like a skull, but there's still some like necrotic flesh on it. And I just think it's badass. And that like one of the great moments of the trilogy is Aragorn grabbing this guy by the throat when he's like, "The dead will not suffer the living to pass." He's like, "You're going to suffer me, you son of a bitch. Look at this sword I got. I'm going to shove it up." I love all that. Like these guys are all oath. Like, if you know the backstory of these guys were all oath breakers. Like one of the kings of Gondor called them to do. It might even been Isildur himself, the great granddaddy of Aragorn. Called them to war, and they betrayed him, and in punishment he sealed them into this mountain to die.
Okay.
And because they're oath breakers, they're condemned. They can't ever get peace. They can't ever go to wherever men go in the Tolkien afterlife. So it was prophesied that the king could come and like command them and banish them to the other realms, and that's what he does here.
Yeah, I'm thinking they don't have a lot to lose. Like, you know, anybody comes along and asks anything of them and promises that, oh, this might actually help you, you know, get some peace or something. Why not help them? Yeah. Like, it's not like they can die, right? Take a shot.
I think they like killing the living. Like they really like, you know, when like a living person stumbles into this cave, like they really take delight in fucking them up. And it's like they're vindictive, and they also think the line of kings have been broken, so they're gonna be stuck here until Middle Earth itself dies. So they're like just and this has been thousands of years. Like this is all the beginning of the Second Age kind of stuff. But I like it. I like the design of the city, how it's like you can see some of the crumbles or ruins, but when the dead show up, it like the city itself is doing what, like you can see the skeleton of it, but also how it used to be great and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's an extended scene that's the last thing that ever was filmed on The Lord of the Rings, where there's like the Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas. They make it like the king just kind of fades into darkness, right? And he never like commits to like, well, I'm going to help you. And they're trying to get out, and like there's this waterfall of skulls that are blowing out of the city. And Peter Jackson making jokes. He's like, we actually did the post work on this 2 weeks after we won the Oscar for best special effects. And there was this kind of like joke about like, you're gilding the lily, like this big expensive effect shot just for the extended edition DVDs and Blu-rays. But there's another extended edition where like they come out of the cave and they see the pirates that are like reaving and pillaging the countryside, and they're kind of demoralized because they think they failed at getting the dead on their side, and the king of the dead and the army come out of the mountain, and you understand that they kick in some pirate booty.
I mean, yeah, they don't do much to prop up their army here. Like the idea that Aragorn would just, the leader of this army would just walk into this place where nobody comes out of, not say a single word about what he's doing or why he's going in there, and leave his army to watch him do it, is incredibly demoralizing. Your leader has just abandoned you in your lowest moment.
Yeah.
Why he wouldn't say like, this is, the path I have to take or something. Like, this is our only hope.
It is.
Give these people hope
writerly.
before you leave them.
Yeah, especially since Theoden's going to be like, so what? We're going to die. Who cares? We're still marching.
Right.
Like, yeah, he could have been like, get on a rock and be like, us three are going to go in here and you all heard the Haunted Mountain. We're going to whip these guys and bring him to fight for us. Like,
right. It is our only hope, and we'll be back. And...
Yeah. That's one of those things where, like, I think it's, you're just supposed to not notice it.
Whoops. Whoops.
So this brings us to the Siege of the White City. Like, I love every bit of this. The Orc Siege machinery and how big it is, and how it's being pushed by orcs and like these trolls and these war trolls with these enormous helmets that are beating on these giant ass drums. And like I said, this is Helm's Deep, but it's in broad daylight, and it's like 100 times bigger than Helm's Deep ever was.
Oh yeah.
And that's it. Faramir returns. He's drugged by his horse. He's riddled with arrows. This is the scene if you recall, when I was talking about the Fellowship, this is the scene that sold me on the series when I heard about it at 13. This scene of the orcs returning the prisoners.
Yeah.
And it's pretty,
I love it.
pretty horrific, like shooting these diseased, rotting heads of all the people they killed in Osgiliuth into the city and instilling fear into it. It's like, God damn.
And then I love that they're firing chunks of the city back at them. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to use our guys, we're going to use the city itself to kill you.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
The rubble of our city you're creating is just going to be these massive, and like the trebuchet versus the catapults is an internet meme at this point, but it's really cool to see these massive siege machines like going at each other. And this is where Dinathor just completely loses his mind when he goes to see his son. Is like, he's finally remembers, oh yeah, I'm a father and I kind of love this shit too. But he sees this massive army in front of him, and he just completely loses his mind, and Gandalf has to smack him upside the head and personally take command. And this is where Gandalf the White comes to bat. He's essentially like a Jedi Knight general. He's going to be at the pack, leading all the defensive, marshaling everybody, keeping everyone's courage up. And yeah, this is there's just so much great stuff. Like the Fell Beast swooping down is very much like the World War II / Star Wars, like bomber sequences and stuff. Like these Stuka dive bomber kind of looking things. And like, I thought it was funny because Peter Jackson said that like he was afraid that he didn't sell the idea that the ring wraiths were sowing fear throughout the city as much as they were actually doing martial deeds. But I thought it came like, I thought that immediately read like, yeah, these guys are not just taking out the defenses in a very efficient way, but they're also just scaring the shit out. It's terrifying, the fact that these guys can just come and pick you up and fling you 500 feet and probably kill your soul too at the same time. But I don't know, like there's this Gron scene. Is this even in the film? Yeah, it has to be. The giant flaming pig-shaped, wolf-shaped door battering ram that they batter down the doors.
Things. Those are so fucking cool. Like, can you imagine you're standing behind these gates and you hear the thump of the battering ram 5, 6, 7 times, and when it finally comes through, it's the head of a wolf and it's on fucking fire. Like, that's so intimidating.
Yeah. And then again, like, there's this great moment where Gandalf is like, as this is happening, he's like, you are men of Gondor. No matter what comes through that door, you will stand your ground. What comes through that door is a giant wolf head breathing fire. And then 3, not just cave trolls, they're like twice the size of cave trolls and are fully armed and armored. And they're just wrecking shop. Like, the fact that any of these guys hold the line is amazing and inspirational. But and then we get into the despair section of this battle where Denethor's lost his mind. He's decided his son's dead and he wants to be dead too, and they're going to burn like the heathen kings of old. Pippin getting thrown out of the tombs. This is one last like the cheapest trick. Like, the guy took the scale, the little Indian guy that was being the scale model for Pippin, or it might have been a woman, a dwarf woman, a little person. But this guy just like throws her bodily out the door into the foreground, and Billy Boyd's just lying on the ground, and he stands up in front of the camera.
Okay, sure.
Like, it's so fucking simple.
Tricks, yeah.
that scene of Gandalf and him talking about the state of the world when like Pip's at the balcony, Boyd's just standing on his knees in that scene. Like they're like this is some of the lowest rent scaling stuff that they did in the whole movies, but it's still it works great. And they get beat back. They have to retreat. The city's got multiple levels with different gates and stuff, but they have to do a full scale retreat. That's all great. It's very, very similar to the escalation of Helm's Deep, honestly. And there's this extra scene right before the Rohirum arrive where the Witch King comes to confront Gandalf in the extended edition, and he actually breaks Gandalf's staff. And then, and Pete said, he's like, I was torn between, like, I felt like I was building up this battle between Gandalf and the Witch King, and I wanted to honor that, but in the way this works out is like, the Witch King comes and talks about what all he's going to do to you, and then he has to go run away because the Rohirrim go, and he's like, on balance it feels like depowering the WitchKing. I don't know.
Yeah, why would the Witch King run from any man if
right
no man can kill him?
Gandalf's not a man, he's like an angelic being, but so
that was another loophole. Didn't have to be a woman that killed him, and it could have been a white wizard.
Well, see, the Witch King is actually a man. So, like, Gandalf can really only open his full magical arsenal against other beings. Like, that's his mandate. Like, you're there, like, Sauron and Morgoth and all these other evil people should not be in Middle-earth starting this shit and, like, leading Balrogs and hideous spiders and stuff. So, like, you're here to balance that. Like, if the enemy brings that might against man, you can kind of balance the scales. But, like, I don't think he can actually go against the Witch King directly, because the Witch King is just a man. He's a man in the same way Gollum's a hobbit. He's been twisted and he wears the ring permanently so you can't see him. But like when you see their wizened kind of corpse looking, like you see, they used to be, they're just regular dudes. They're following Sauron of their own free will. No trickery, no sorcery. It's their own greed that got him into this situation. So I don't think Gandalf can actually oppose this guy directly.
I was under the impression
scholars,
yeah.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but
I was under the impression that he was not a man, that the Witch King was somehow special beyond the others. And I guess that makes sense if he's wearing the ring, a ring that he would be perhaps invisible, and that's why he was like more spirit than physical looking.
That's why like no man can probably kill him, or at least he thinks he's confident of that. But I also love like the design of the Witch King, where it's like essentially he looks exactly like he did in the Fellowship, except for now he's got this giant iron crown that kind of frames where his face would be if there was a face there. Fucking love it. It's iconic. So then you got the arrival of the Rohirrim, and this is another beautiful scene. Yeah. This like all these horses, and I guess there's like 100 dudes on horses, and then they used they kind of duplicate it and fill it out with CGI characters, and it looks beautiful. Them on that ridge with the sun kind of cresting. And Theoden gives like one of the all-time, like he shit the bed with the like, hey, we're gonna die, he kind of does like it's pretty much the same speech because their rallying cry is death, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But it's just like he goes for broke in the like the pumping up phase, like clashing spears and swords and all that kind of stuff.
And the effect it has on the orcs, like the charge itself is so incredibly cool because you get to see their progressive reaction, right? You've got the white orc or whatever shouting, okay, bow people, loose your bows, and they take a couple shots, a couple riders go down, but as they get closer and it's apparent that a bow rally here is not going to stop these charging cavalry, you can see it change from like, we got this, to fear. On the
it's an inversion of the massacre at Ausgiliuth. Like, here's a cavalry charge and you're taking down dudes, but guess what? There's 6,000 more where that came from. And
right.
I mean, I don't know what the ancient battles looked like, but like you always hear about how terrifying a mass cavalry charge is. And holy shit, it's a tsunami that breaks over you. Mm-hmm. And once it does, like, once it gets past your pike line, it's just and it is until heavier cavalry show up in the form of the Mammakuls. But you have this like this moment of like, Theoden gives a speech out of his mind, and the score kicks up. Howard Shore just really goes for broke again, and like Karl Urban's just terrifying, throwing these spears, and he's just screaming right into the camera's face. He's doing great early Karl Urban work is what he's doing. And
Is
I
this
think
the
I don't know, like
largest scale battle to this point dedicated to film? Because it's got to be, right?
Oh boy,
I mean,
I'm not a expert, but good lord, like I think of some of the other cast of thousand things like Ben-Hur and the Longest Day and some of the other. I can't imagine you'd have something bigger than this.
yeah.
Maybe an animation, but like yeah, it's just hard to like. That's why some of these things have never been seen before. Like they invented technology just to do it. But yeah, like I said, it looks like it's an easy win. They all backdrop this with like Dinathor burning Faramir, and it's like distracting Gandalf away from the action, which also that's a little horse shit. Like Gandalf is going to like stop leading humanity because one dude's not even a king. He doesn't even have magic blood. He's just a steward. Yeah. He's just some git from some base-born steward. He's going to stop what he's doing to save him.
It's not like he even has a crucial role to play later, right? I could see it if he was like the key to something.
I'm sure the 1,000 Gondorians that died to Fell Beast while Gandalf was distracted really appreciated they saved Faramir's worthless ass. He's not the line of stewards is done after this anyway.
Couldn't have called your Eagles in, just like spend that time calling the Eagles in to stop the Fell Beast a little earlier.
Get the Moth network going, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, like I said, this with the elephants and like Peter Jackson has this interesting thing where like. People are sympathetic to elephants because at this point, like, people have turned against circuses and zoos. And like he had a lot of shots of these mammals like just they're taking quivers full of arrows and they're shrieking in pain and rearing up. And like test audiences were like torn. It's like, you're going into battle against slave puppies. So like it was a balancing act between like it's like, okay, we need more of the elephants stomping the Rohirum and using their like fucking war clubs to like kill and we need less of them shrieking in pain because like it's so the audience is so sympathetic to these, the fucking elephants aren't evil. They're just being driven by not even evil men, misguided men.
Yeah, I don't even know how you would control a beast this large and strong. Like I don't think they make a point to really show that. How they're actually
they got that
them.
dude. They got like big hooks in their ears. Like their ears are pierced with these hooks, and that dude on the top is like pulling one direction and other to get their heads to.
Just a dude controlling these massive beasts. And when they show the dude the first time, they show him like really close up, like this forced perspective thing where I thought it was a giant. I thought it was walking alongside these elephants.
I think he is a big dude for sure, but yeah.
But then when like big. Legolas takes him down, it's apparent that they're just kind of small, just regular sized dudes. And I'm like, there's no way you could control a beast that big. Although I love some of the details, like that barbed wire between their tusks that they're using as like,
and some of them have like giant like war maces welded to the end of them.
Yeah, so cool, so cool.
Maybe my
like
favorite
scene
fighting them.
I don't know. Like, unless you have a Legolas type, or you get a lucky shot with a trebuchet or something.
Or like Eowyn did the Luke Skywalker snow speeder, like riding between her legs, which is a suicidal thing, but like hamstringing them, that was kind of cool.
Sure. My favorite scene, and I'm sure this is heresy. I'm sure people hate this scene, but maybe my favorite thing in the entire Return of the King movie is Legolas taking down one of those elephants
by himself.
I love it. I think it's amazing.
It's not heresy, I don't think. I think because like I think most people hate the surfing down the steps in Helm's Deep.
Right.
This is that only cool.
Way cooler. Yeah.
This isn't tone. This is like an elf, like just kind of making ship as he goes along and being a badass and like having supernatural skill and balance. And yeah, it's just like it's got a great pacing too. Like he just methodically, like a man chopping down a tree, goes to work on this thing.
Yeah, the way he uses, he cuts the rope that's holding the saddle on or whatever, and he uses that to ride up to the top of it is super cool. And then he's shooting it in the head with his quiver full of arrows, like multiple, it's at 6 at a time or something to take this thing down, and then surfs down its tusk. And then the clincher is when Gimli's like, that still only counts as one.
Yeah, because he's still all about trying to beat him on the field of battle. Like, it's great. It's great. And right before that, like, obviously the Ghost Army comes ashore. Okay, here's some maybe Tolkien heresy. I think the concept of Ghost Army is cool, but when you see distant shots of them taking out the elephants and like going up the rings of Mira's Tear, I understand why I had to do it, because you had to wrap up this big battle very quickly.
Yeah.
But do you remember when we were kids, they had commercials like with the scrubbing bubbles? You know, like your mom would come in and spray a tub, and then these like animated scrub, like they had bubbles of scrubbing brushes, and they just go all over the place cleaning it. These ghosts look just like the scrubbing bubbles, and I can't. It's like,
I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, if you got a grimy bathtub, unleash the doomed men of the Oathbreakers and Shield Snappers, and they'll cut through that grime like CLR, baby. But it's a little hokey. You just see,
but I mean, that's like the effect these guys would have, right? It's something you can't hit with a sword, a regular sword. So like they would just be a wave that breaks over the entire. I was hoping
to be more like Angel of Death and like the Ten Commandments, like some kind of wispy thing that like goes through a crowd and people just die. Like they just like they're not like there's no mechanism for it. The ghosts are just methodically working through and like ripping people's souls out of their bodies. Like the whole they're more like neon World War Z zombies. Yeah. Like just a mass like mountaining together and just kind of going all over the place. But
and they kind of set that up earlier when Aragorn's got the sword and the head of these guys tries to cut him down with a sword.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they still use weapons, right? It's not their ghostly visages that come in there and kill you. It's
right.
The
they
swords
just frighten you to death.
Right.
Yeah. There's an extra scene of Eowyn, because we're going to talk about Eowyn and how badass she is. Eowyn hamstrings this Mammakul, and then she takes out in the extended version. She doesn't kill, but like hobbles Gothmog, the albino general orc, elephant man orc, which I thought was like a little bit like too much. Like she's about to kill the Witch King. Settle down. She doesn't literally have to kill every named character on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. But that's like this is straight out of the fucking books, man. This guy like going to kill Theoden personally, and she's not having any of it. And he's like, thou fool, dost thou not know that no man may hinder me? And her ripping off her helmet. I am no man, you son of a bitch. Stab into your non-existent face. Yeah, I mean, there's not a theater in the world that doesn't cheer when you see that.
Sure.
It's like I said, right out of a fucking novel. Tolkien didn't write many women characters, but holy hell, this was way ahead of the curve what he was doing here. And yeah, there's like, and this is all, and like, there's also this. I think the one scene that we missed is like there's this like interim period in the battle where like the men have retreated to the last rung of the city, and there's a war troll trying to batter down this last little of defense, and they're waiting for it, and Pippin's scared that he's going to die, and Gandalf comforts him with essentially a vision of Middle Earth heaven. It's like, yeah, if we die, it's not the worst. It's I think that's I don't know. I'm not a spiritual man, but I think it's pretty moving, and it's a great performance from Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
So yeah, Theoden dies. Like he brings his circle full, to his character arc to a full, that he's secured his people's future, but he's going to die, but he's not now embarrassed to go off with his forefathers into the whatever fucking Rohirum Valhalla they got going on. And then Aragorn decides to release the ghosts. I've heard some people like, they take Gimli essentially takes the view is like, why are we letting these guys go to war's not half won? But I feel like Aragorn, he's very legal, like straight, like, hey, this is help me in this battle and I'll let you go. It would diminish him to impress these guys into further service.
It's not that he's even just very legal about it. He's very honorable about it.
Honorable,
he's given his word. He's not going to go back on that.
There's a ton of stuff. There's an aftermath that's like twice as long in the extended scenes of like the houses of healing and like Aragorn healing using his some of his healing powers, like in the first movie with the weed, his bushcraft to kind of like help the people heal Eowyn's shattered arm, because she took that, Jesus Christ, that Witch King's mace
right to her shield. Yeah.
The Weta guys said that they took a mock of a mace because they knew Peter wanted some crazy ass weapon, and they brought it to him, and Peter's like, "Oh, I love it. Now make it twice as big." Like they're like, "Oh, we're gonna take this to him, and you're gonna get it in one," and it's like, nah. But yeah, she takes that to the shield and just completely obliterates her arm.
Yeah.
They're healing. There's a scene of Aragorn using the Palantir to directly challenge Sauron. Like, look at you, look here, you son of a bitch, I'm coming for you, to like really get him worked up for this final battle. But there's a lot of good stuff in this aftermath sequence too, like Pippin finding Merry on the battlefield and pledging to take care of him, completing his arc of growing up and putting the childish stuff away.
All these arc completions. I'm really loving all the arc completions, because this movie, like, one thing I can say about it that's incredibly positive, with all the cuts they had to make and all the condensation that they had to do from the books, is this thing is really tightly plotted. I can't think of a single thing from this movie that I really would have cut. That Eowyn and Aragorn stuff started last movie, so I don't really count that. Yeah. But like, this thing is tight. Everything makes sense, like how the armies get to where they go. What armies show up where and what support they're getting from where. All of that stuff is just like, okay, this all makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you always know, like in this scene where Gandalf's saying, like, the war's over, right? Well, Frodo still hasn't destroyed the ring, and what's our best chance of giving him, Sauron's now going to like pull all his defenses back, and it's going to be hell for two hobbits to get through. Yeah. But he is afraid of all the men uniting, and you have done that. And he's also afraid of you in particular, Aragorn, because you the same blood that chopped his fingers off the last time flows through you. You got the sword that did it reforged.
Let's go distract him. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
I actually really like the extended scene where Aragorn challenges him with the Palantir, because he's got the Palantir and he like holds up the sword. He's like, look at this, you son of a bitch. You remember this? I'm coming for you. And Sauron kind of quails, but then he hits him with dead Arwen. Like, oh yeah, well, look at this is what I'm doing. And she's about dead and you don't have much time left. So it's like a battle of the wills and you're not really sure who was more shook. So we go to Mordor. This is a scene where I really insist needs to be back in the theatrical edition. And if you haven't seen it, please, God, this one scene, the Mouth of Sauron. There's this character in the book where when Gandalf and Theoden and Aragorn ride up to parley, in bad faith with Sauron, but he sends his mouth as this another one of his mortal servants, and they don't really describe him very well in the books. But the way Peter Jackson envisions him is he got this really creepy actor who plays the thing that I know him from is he was the gyrocopter pilot in the Mad Max series. He's this kind of really lanky, redheaded Australian dude. But he covers him head to toe in like this flowing black robes, and he's got this like kind of like weird crown that covers his entire head except for his mouth. And then they took a digital effect and enlarged his mouth like 200%. And it's like hideous. Like his mouth is crisscrossed with all these cuts because his helmet looks like it's a assembly of razor blades framing his face. And
like
Aragorn and
Silent Hill.
It's really fucking cool. And they have like this right out of the book kind of like, banding of words before the battle starts. And he shows him. There's a scene where he shows him because the orcs have got Frodo, they've got his mithril vest, and they almost break the fellowship here. Like Aragorn's like, and Gandalf both are like, Jesus Christ, what? Frodo's already dead, But But I guess the only problem is in this book, Aragorn, or in the film, Aragorn cuts his head off, and in the book he makes a point to refuse to do that. Like he's like, it's a flag of truce and we're doing diplomacy here and you're a shit and you're threatening us, but fuck you, we're better than that. But then I love the scene of like, because we're going to talk about this later, the eye is kind of almost caught Frodo. And it's like really desperately searching for him. And it's such a great idea to have like Sauron personified by this giant eye on the top of the tower. And you can see like it's literally tearing itself away to like fix on Aragorn. Like the plan's working, right? It's such an elegant way to show that. So Aragorn gives a very impressive, this would be one of the best martial encouragement, whipping up your troops into a frenzy speeches had Theoden not just crazy done his death ride 15 minutes before. But he does a pretty good job.
Not
about,
this day. It's good.
Not this day. There will be a day when all the shit goes to shit, but it's not today. I'm not going to let it happen. I like the like implied seduction. Like Sauron tries one last time to sap Aragorn's fighting strength, and you kind of think it worked, but then he summons his courage for Frodo and Leroy Jenkins the shit out of this thing.
Yeah.
And this is like essentially super battle of the bastards. Like if they're all in a tight knot, they're just getting like there's impossible odds. They're completely surrounded. They're gonna die. There's no way out. And now here comes the fucking fell beasts. And in the second thing that gets me teared up every single time I think about it, the fucking eagles come riding in.
Right.
And whip, balance the scales once again for the forces of men, tear ass these fell beasts up. It's a great scene. I fucking love it.
Did Gandalf call him in? I'm a little confused as to why they show up now. Is it just like this Deus Ex, or is it just somebody called
I want to say that this is divine intervention. That like the god of Middle Earth has had enough and thinks and is like balancing like the him or one of his direct agents, because there's like Middle Earth cosmetology. You've got like Eru Iluvatar, which is like Jehovah, the god Yahweh. And then you've got like, I think between 9 and 12 kind of essentially Jesus Christs that like are his original creation, that them singing songs then create the rest of the world. And then there's a satanic figure called Morgoth that fall. But yeah, anyway.
And I read a little bit about like Tolkien's background, being a Catholic, and some of the like the elements of grace that he put in here, and faith, and how, men alone, like, and it ties back into Frodo's journey, right? Because he gets to the very end and he decides he can't do it. And maybe we'll talk about that more there, but this seems like another note of that, where like, if not, but for the grace of God, they would have lost here.
And I do think that there's, I like the way, like in Judeo-Christian tradition, it's like, well, if you put faith in God, God will do the heavy lifting for you. Where in this world, it's like the opposite. Like God expects you to take care of your own shit. And like when the evil forces play dirty, he will balance the odds, but you got to do it. He's not going to show up. He's, like with rare exception, is he going to like, have the earth swallow up an army? Although I guess this does happen.
It does happen. Yeah. But they met him halfway for sure.
Yeah, he did the thing. Like, they won. Like this, but they also have, I think, I don't know, they have like Aragorn 1v1ing this troll, which one of my favorite parts of the movie, just from a hilarious, is the way this troll instantly runs away like a 4-year-old from combat. Once the ring gets destroyed, he like drops this thing and turns on. He's like, it's please go back and watch the retreat of this particular troll. It's hilarious. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, I don't know, watching this guy like if he was sobbing into a blanket, it would be slightly less ridiculous. And then there's like, the fucking, like at this point in time, Frodo has thrown in the ring into the Crack of Doom, and it's exploding, and the lava's taking out the Nazgul and all the fell beasts, and there's this triumphant moment, but then they're like, oh shit, Frodo's likely in the middle of all this. Yeah. At which point we will now talk about the rest of the story. Okay. This is this was the Fellowship. Now we're in the Frodo and Sam part. They don't really play this up in the book, this like 3-way battle of wills between Sam and Frodo and Gollum, and I guess between Gollum and Smeagol, because Sam in the beginning of this movie, he still sees a path home. Like he doesn't see this as a suicide mission, where Frodo, the ring bearer, has kind of given up on life. And then Gollum is like, his thing is like, at all costs, he doesn't want the ring to be destroyed. It's his precious. He wants that thing back. And he doesn't want Sauron to get it too. This is like his worst fucking nightmare scenario the whole time. And I think it's like, there's really good Gollum stuff here. We talked about this, that like this was essentially peak Gollum. I think we might have talked this before the podcast, but Peter Jackson mentioned this is the final movie. They had an extra full calendar year to work on the Gollum effects, and he pointed out like particular things around, especially the expression of the eyes. Like they had a little bit more muscular, facial muscular articulation, so he could give you a better performance. And I think it works. That it really works. They showcase it here when he talks to us a reflection, and it's Smeagol and Gollum kind of walking you through the plan and setting up this conflict, because Frodo is empathetic to Gollum to the point of kind of insanity, and
Mhm.
Sam sees what's actually happening, which makes Frodo even more distrustful. And Gollum really plays this off masterfully.
Yeah.
He's the whole thing about, you watch this fat hobbit, he's going to ask to carry the ring.
Yeah, he sets it up.
He's going to do it, sets it up, and like just plays Frodo like a fiddle. The way he does this comedy with the Limbus bread, I think it's I think it works in the storytelling, and it's also funny, just like how he like sprinkles crumbs. Like he really thinks it all through.
Oh, for sure.
And then like his exaggerated, like, what could have happened to the Limbus bread? I don't. And Sam's like, you took it. Frodo's like, this guy, it's poison to him. He's not going to take it, you idiot. And it's great.
It's really good. In this scene, and Andy Serkis, I don't know if we talked in the second movie in Two Towers, I think, about how Andy Serkis did this sort of one take thing where he's switching back and forth between Gollum and Smeagol. And here he does it again, I assume, with the mirrored on the water, showing him, talking to himself here. And I got the impression that I didn't get from the other movies, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it the case that the evil side of Smeagol here is in fact the ring? Like it's because at some point I thought he was calling himself Smeagol and my precious, and I like these two sides of it. I know, like, obviously the corrupting influence of the ring is like part of what made him turn evil, but
because you can imagine
there was
like,
more to it than that.
Like Sam and Frodo being on that river and finding the ring, and something very similar happening to them. I don't know.
I might have misread it.
It's not I mean, it's a perfectly valid interpretation. I don't know if that's what Tolkien was going for or Jackson was going for. That like it's more of like the ring will tempt you with whatever's inside your heart, and some people are less corruptible than others. Like, for example, when Sam bears it, because he actually does bear it for a brief time in the books, he's the delusions of grandeur in his head is like him being this master gardener,
right, you told me about that.
Controls all the gardens of the world, and it are perfect rows, and like all this like that's the maximum of his ambition. And honestly, in the hands of like a lesser, like a hobbit, it kind of like makes him go into reclusion, and whereas a man, it might make him feel very ambitious, and so like I think it's like that's the thing, is like Sauron designed this thing to tempt great people, so when it ends in the hands of like the little folk or lesser beings from Sauron's position, like the idea that, well, shit, you give this a hobbit, he'll just take into a hole for 3,000 years. That's the last thing Sauron wants. Sauron wants a mighty elf or a man to get it and come back to his front door to give it back to him because he thinks he can beat him. So I do love the performance Serkis gives here, like Gollum making his distaste face when Gollum's like the Shelob only gets to eat filthy orcses, and they're not very they don't taste very nice. No, they don't. These are I love it.
And the escalation of this whole mistrust thing, I think, is good, because you had a lot of these same tone scenes in Two Towers, right, where like Sam's mistrustful or whatever of Gollum. And Frodo's not, right? Frodo sees him as pathetic and something to be helped, whatever, a guide for them. This escalates it because now he's heard it from Smeagol's own mouth, right? And I think that was the difference. Before, he was suspicious just because he's suspicious. Now he's actually heard Smeagol speak the words. I think that's kind of necessary, because then you get more on Sam's side, right?
It's real tension too. Like, and not only that, but like Gollum shines him on. Right. Like when Frodo scolds him and leads him away, and he looks back and like, yeah, I fucking got you now.
Yeah.
It's great. And like all of Gollum's reactions are so exaggerated. Like when he sees his own blood and he like to scream, and he's got this exaggerated terror of the stupid fat hobbit and whatnot.
Right.
There's also a lot of really cool details in the extra scenes. They show more of like the fact that like Mordor used to be a province of Gondor. It's just the neighborhood's gone to shit. And you can see like where there's these great statues of men that the orcs have like sawed their heads off and like replaced them with like these ugly, rusted, like twisted heads and stuff. And it's like typified by Minas Morgul, the former outpost city of Gondor that's been taken over by the Witch King as his territory. And you can see it's still like the gleaming white edifice, and it's like this exquisite architecture. But Alan Lee and John Howe, the production designers, I think it was Alan Lee, was motivated by really bad. Look, okay, all the dentists in the audience, I know there's a couple of you, cover your ears. But he was traumatized by this bad tooth job, this bad root canal that ended up doing bridge work, and like him looking in the mirror and seeing like his pristine white teeth encircled with this metal and like the gums inflamed and kind of all upset. And he designed Minas Morgul to be like, okay, take like the Minas Ithil, the White City, and then like put a whole bunch of rusted metal, like digging into that white pristine surface, and there's rust stains running down it. Like it's a tooth, it's a traumatized tooth that's being corrupted and things carved away from it. It's cool. And I think John Howe said he's like he was going for a haunted Mormon temple.
Okay.
Like the Great Temple at Salt Lake, like that, only with sickly green light on it. But it's an iconic design. This staircase, I think, like I always thought in the book, like, what does this staircase actually look like? This endless stair. But goddamn, that's exactly what it looks like. Like it's just believable that you could climb that thing.
It's just believable you could call that stairs. It's incredible. Like it's a sheer rock face, essentially.
It is easier than Tom cruising your way up the bare face, but like and the fact that these hobbits are sleeping, I get like weak in the knees especially when I see this on my big screen TV in high def. Like they sell the illusion. Every time you cut away from them, they're like another mile in the air, and that Minas Morgul is even smaller. But like
this is the people who climb Everest and like sleep in sleeping bag cots, sort of like carabinered to the side of the mountain.
I've seen
because
those,
the face is so fucking steep and there's nowhere to go, but they gotta sleep. It's terrifying.
Yeah, how you ever do. Like I like an adventure. I do like going out and camping and roughing it in the wild. But like, I've seen those shots of guys like just sleeping against a bare face wall, and it's like, Christ, how do you get a wink of sleep?
I don't know.
But it's cool and all that stuff, like the Minas Morgul coming to life, and the Witch King riding into battle, and like the spire of witch light that goes in the sky, and it flinging its gates open, is disgorging this massive orc army, is super iconic, and it ties the action together to the previous stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
And I also think that Elijah's performance of like wary, distrustful Frodo, like the first time when Sam asked to carry the ring, it's such a great reaction shot. This kind of like demented side eye he fires over at Sam. And then we already talked about the fact that so in this doesn't happen. This like tension between Frodo and Sam that boils over and Sam banishes him doesn't happen in the book. But I listened to Peter Jackson had like a couple reasons why. He's like, number one, it's inherently scarier to go into a spider tunnel when you're by yourself.
Sure.
So like I wanted to peel him away from that. I also wanted to have like some actual tension, so it's not just like Sam and Frodo holding hands all the way to the crack of doom. And he also said I also wanted to subvert the reader's expectations. That's always a bad, like anytime you change something just to subvert it. But
yeah. Well,
I actually do like it.
Yeah, the thing it does is it cracks open that unity that everybody's showing, right? Like if that's the thing that Sauron feeds on, is the disunity between the forces of men, well then you got that in a microcosm here between Sam and Frodo, and I think that works really well. I like the fight between Sam and Gollum here. Like I don't know if I believe that Gollum could take even a single punch from Sam without turning into pudding, but like
he's
his
got
body's
that wiry
so twisted.
Wiry old man strength. Like you take a wiry old man strength, give it 3,000 more years to mature. It's the wiriest.
But do I believe that like Bilbo lacking the ring could take a punch from Sam? Not sure about that. So Gollum even being more twisted and sickly, I'm not sure he could. But
it's like punching coal and steel cable. I don't know. But then you go into Shalab's lair. I am very afraid of spiders. In fact, it was only about I think I rewatched this trilogy with the Rift Tracks version about 2 years ago, and it's the first time ever I was able to watch Shelob actually sting Frodo. Like every single time, my go-to move when I was watching something scary is I would just kind of like look down and to the right and kind of like lose focus for a while. But like every single time she like crouched over him and that stinger came out, I'm like, nope, okay. I'm going to wait until Frodo starts like spitting out Alka-Seltzer and I'll come back to the movie. But this spider is the fucking worst. It's the grossest, scariest spider in all of movie prove me wrong, you know? I got my table and cup of coffee right here.
The buildup is so good, man. Like him getting stuck in those webs and have like the spider appearing behind him and having to cut his way through the webs. Like he's freaking out. These webs are like grabbing him even more as he twists. Like it's terrifying for sure.
And the first scene you see of Shelob, she's like, it's one of those like alien, curled up in pipe scene where it's like she's there, but then the light hits her and like one of those legs and she starts crawling. And it's like, it's just, you see the legs, right? And then she crawls out of the hole. Christ. Like I said, this fucking thing still gives me the willies. We're not here yet, but like I have a hard time watching Shelob sting Frodo. But yeah, like everything about like the way the webs are gooey, the bits of bone and gristle that's in them, everything is just terrible. It's all just terrible. I hate it, and it's amazing.
My skeptic brain comes in here and says, okay, Gollum, his plan is to send Frodo into the cave, which he describes as a cave that no one ever comes out of. So he's going to send Frodo in there with the ring. Shelob's going to eat Frodo, and then what? Then there's big question, and then get the ring.
Yeah, I think she throws like there's like the idea the spider clean. It's kind of belied by the set design, but the idea the spider cleans its web, you know, like he just says like he'll throw out the empty clothes and bones, and then he'll get it then. Or there's also I think that Shelob and Gollum have a somewhat tenuous pact. When he was like trying to go to Mordor to look for the ring, he made a deal with her that he would lead like goblins to her lair and let her, let her feed on them in exchange for letting him pass to and from. So I think in the books, there's like he's like counting on this kind of alliance that like he can look. I gave these fat, tasty morsels, and maybe you will let me come in and get these rags and these bones. You don't want them anyway, right? And then, so Frodo, there's a really good pacing because you think you're through the worst of it, and Frodo collapses, and then he's got this vision of Galadriel that like literally lifts him up, which I think is a great effect. Like spiritually, he's being uplifted, and then she just gets him instantly. And God, like I said, the way that stinger extends from her belly.
Yeah, it's okay. So I have
the sound it makes when she stings him. If you're going to ask me how she stings him through his mithril, go fuck yourself, because there's no answer to that.
That was the number one question I have in this scene is impenetrable armor plus spider stinger does not equal stung Frodo.
No, like
do they get around that in the book, or is that just an oversight?
I think Tolkien just maybe brain farted it because, or maybe I don't know. Maybe he does have to take the mithril off at some point, but like, yeah, that doesn't track at all. At all. Like if she bit him on the neck or something, like, but yeah, even like when you see him later bare chested, his sting is right where right where the mithril should be. That's essentially the same place that the cave troll spit roasted him on. So
yeah.
It is Tolkien heresy. I think we're up to 5 now. Potential Tolkien heresy. That's some bullshit, but it works. The other thing is like Shelob is a semi divine being herself. She's like the daughter of this spider that drank all the light in the world at one point during the War of the Silmarillion, the Silmarils. So like maybe I don't think the Balrog for the mithril vest would protect Frodo from the Balrog for a minute, right?
Sure.
Or like Gandalf or Saruman, like they probably, and maybe Shelob just like don't give a fuck about your dwarven steel. She's from God. She's angel stuff, man, demon stuff.
I didn't get any of that from the movie. Maybe that's in the book.
That's in the deep lore. It's to entice you to read it.
Yeah. It's hilarious to me that this thing with Galadriel where she gives him the light and the armor, like it happened so long ago in movie terms that you've got to have the flashback to remind the audience before he pulls out that light.
Then Sam, so like it bites him or it stings him and it wraps him up. And then like one of the great crowd pleasing moments of all time. This is straight from the book. Sam striding forth at the light of Elendil and sting and back away, get away from me, you filth. It's a huge crowd pleaser. And then this whole, like, I just love this battle. Like it's terrifying because especially when he's like fucking with her mandibles, like desperately trying to keep one step ahead of all of her many ways that she's got to bite and sting him.
Yeah.
It's and like water falling over her body and he's losing his sword and all that stuff. But I love because it happens just like in the books. The Shalab gets into like this blood frenzy to kill him and just stabs herself with her own bloated weight. Like Sam couldn't possibly have wounded her that deep, but her using all of her force to crush him and him putting that elvish magic sword is enough to like really really get her deep and wound her and make her retreat. And it's amazing. And just like in the book, Sam thinks Frodo's dead and tries to press on. And just like in the book, these orcs come by conveniently to explain an exaggerated pantomime, everything that's going on, and make Sam feel like a real asshole.
You've got two people at this point because they're cutting back and forth between the battle at Minas Tirith and this, sure. And you've got two people at this point who are paralyzed but not dead, both who are mistaken for dead. And I don't know if they're trying to do anything in particular with that, but I couldn't help notice the parallel.
No, it does feel like there's a lot, like Tolkien does like to do parallels like that, and I hadn't noticed that one, but that's a good one. And the fact that their mistaken identity does like hinge somewhat on the battles too, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Because like they got the Cirith Ungol. This is just like in the books, like the Morgul, the Mordor orcs getting another tiff with the Uruk-hai. And I love how it escalates, and they just all like they attack each other tooth and nail. And then Sam, and it's exactly like it happens in the book. They describe like he has this Han Solo moment where Sam works himself up in this Hobbit berserker rage, and he's like charging up these stairs, bellowing like a beast. And the orcs see this giant, they're like, "My God, this is one of the old heroes of men or orc coming to get us!" And they're like terrified because he's just coming at him with this ferocity, and like but that does have to work for him. But I just love it, like, this is for the Shire, and this is for Frodo, and this is for my old gaffer, as he throws the last one over.
Is that did the Shire, like, does he know that the Shire has been corrupted at this point in the books or something? Is this a holdover from that, or?
Nah, it's just him. It's just him, like, doing what all guys do, like
preserve what he loves rather than
repping the hometown, man.
Get revenge. Okay,
yeah. But so they and there's like you see this makeup they do with Frodo, man, where he's got like shit in his eye, and he's like very cadaverous. He's covered in these webs. And the way the chain they show this biting into his neck, like you can start to see it's like almost sawing through his flesh in the scene. It's really rough. And this is the part where like I think Sam starts to give up. Like when they catch sight of like how much army they got and how much further they go and how weak Frodo is, he starts like giving in to despair himself. And there's a scene where like Frodo is just, like I said, like I think Elijah Wood deserves an Oscar because the exhaustion this guy portrays. Yeah. Like there's this physical acting where the Sauron's trying to find him and the eye's about to get him, and Sam's like, "Get down," and Frodo can't do anything but essentially just like hurl himself at the ground. To merely, like, I just think it's amazing, physically grueling acting he's doing. Especially
when you contrast it with how Frodo started in Fellowship, right? Like, he's so bright-eyed, he's so full of life. And that scene where he talks about how the veil between him and Sauron is completely gone at this point, right?
He's naked,
he's seeing him in his waking vision right in front of him.
Right.
It's really haunting, and the performance that goes with it is incredible.
Yeah, and there's like, this is another one because I'm going to struggle not to get choked, or I must think about baseball during, but like when Sam gives him that pep talk and like, and Howard Shore just hits this incredibly sweet Shire flute as Frodo kind of like fights, like he's like inching, and before he collapses, and Sam's cradling him. He's like, Mr. Frodo, do you remember the Shire and spring and blossoms and strawberries? And he does that speech, and then Sam's like, well, if I can't carry fucking Samwise Gamgee, I can't carry the ring, I'll carry you. Yep. Holy shit. And the Peter Jackson said, Sam, like Sean Astin did that. He huffed, he fireman carried Elijah Woods up this fake ass volcano.
It's hilarious because in the first two movies, like this is the third speech is a charm for Sam, right? Yeah. But it can't work on Frodo because Frodo is too destroyed. Yeah, he's too far gone. But it can work on Sam this time. And Sam says, fuck it, I'm going to lift you to the top of this thing.
Yeah, he inspires himself.
He does.
And it's such a great contrast between the martial skill that's going on the other side of the battle, where it's just like sword on sword. This is just a battle of will and how much you love another person.
And this is after Sam has completely understood what Frodo's gone through, right? He gets a taste, the smallest taste of the lure of this ring when he's got it in his hand, and he's saying, no, I took it off your body so they wouldn't find it.
Right. There's a lot more of that in the book, but yeah.
You get the impression that Sam now understands, whereas he didn't before. He kind of understood it on some level, but now he gets it. And what it must be to travel with this ring for that long. Yeah.
And this is the part where he stops thinking we're not going to make it out of here. This is a one-way trip, and all we got to do is do that. I'm no longer saving strength to return back. I think it's an extended scene where all these pots and pans that he's carefully carried across, he throws away because it's just dead weight now. Because there's a whole scene after we skipped over an extra scene of Frodo and Sam. They dress up as goblins to kind of pass incognito, and they get swept up in the army that goes to march out to the gates. Is that in the theatrical version?
No, but I have seen that part. I've seen that scene before because I kept expecting it to happen here. But I love the armor, this oversized orc armor that they're in.
Yeah, the big noses and stuff, and how cool it is, and it's also very ironic that Aragorn's and company are going to lay down their life to provide this diversion, and it's working so well that it's actually sweeping the guys that you're wanting to help for closer and closer to the danger.
Yeah.
But so Sam, he bucks up, he carries his buddy up to the top, and then Gollum Shalab is melts out, he crests his boulder. It's a big gas moment, and he attacks Sam, and Sam's this is building up this whole fucking last two movies. They're going at each other, and Frodo gets this last manic burst of energy and just goes sprinting up the final distance. And then Frodo's standing there, and this is just mirrored perfectly like it was with Isildur and Elrond in the first movie. They're there, all he's got to do is throw it, and fucking the ring has finally got Frodo, finally broke him at the very last step, and he can't do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and now also as soon as he puts on the ring, the eye lasers back to and then this is all in the book too. Tolkien writes Sauron is panic mode. He realizes that he's fallen for this trap. Aragorn has fooled him. He is instead of inches away from winning the ultimate war, he's inches away from losing everything. And he calls on all of his servants, Nazgul are taking off fucking, F-22s and are streaking towards the Mount Doom and everything, and it's just going to be too late. And it all comes down to Gollum, it's right out of the book. He bites the ring off of Frodo's hand. Frodo becomes the famous Frodo of Nine Fingers. They do in the book, he just capers his way off the ledge, and Peter Jackson said they tried to do it that way. They shot it a billion different ways, and he's I never really. It always seemed a little silly to have it that be but he wanted to kind of this primal. It was the way he filmed it. It's this is primal. The monkeys fighting in 2001: A Space Odyssey over this trinket, and Gollum finally wins. And I guess
I think it works really well. It's almost the greed that it inspires in the people who bear the ring was ultimately its undoing, right? Because the fight that takes it over the edge is the thing that destroys it.
And I was wondering, this is one another moments when I was watching for the first time, is like the final moment that I was waiting to see if he could nail it. Because in the book, it's like you got an invisible man fighting a CGI creature. What the shit is that going to look like? And he's going to bite his finger off. Is he going to? And it just works, man. It looks exactly like it would look. Like, you know, it's kind of ridiculous, but the stakes are so high, and you care so much about these characters. I just love it. I love how. I actually like how it went down a little bit better than the book. I love the slow, like you can almost think like, God damn, the ring, it just might not even work, but it finally does succumb.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Sauron, the animation they do of Sauron, like his tower crumbling and he's still at the top of it. And he's like looking all around for a way out. And like, I don't know how they make this giant eyeball of fire look afraid, but they fucking do. And it explodes and destroys the army.
Cheering the armies.
Everybody's cheering. The earth swallows up the armies of darkness, literally. And now Frodo, now that the ring is out of his that psychic weight's lifted, you think that Frodo's going to make a recovery. Now we can remember, you know, how hot Rosie Cotton was and what strawberries taste like. And now Frodo gets to comfort Sam, who has been a one way support the last two movies. And now he's comforting Sam and just like trying desperately to get like, you know, this is the first ending that we get.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all endings from here on out. The rest, however long it's going to do, it's however long it takes to get to the ending. Fade to black, complete fade to black. The eagle's coming. It's a beautiful painterly shot. The POV of him being carried. Peter Jackson said he deliberately, made an analogy back to Frodo's experience being took back to the House of Elrond and healed in the first movie. Then you get a fade to white. I think this is the second ending. Now he wakes up and he's in this hospital bed in Gondor, and Gandalf is laughing, and it's like it's very easy to overdo these scenes. If you want to see one of these things overdone, watch the end of the second Harry Potter movie, where I swear to Christ, they spend 15 minutes clapping for Hagrid and everyone just like looking ever increasingly maniacally, insanely happy about this thing. And it just goes on and on and on.
This feels like the compromise between that and the Star Wars throne room scene, where it's like,
where
you want a little more than just that, but yeah.
Yeah, can Chewie get a medal? Can like everyone gets everyone gets a moment. Like, you know, Gandalf gets a moment, Merry and Pippin, Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, and then they save the hammer for last. Sam comes in, and that's great. They don't even need words. Like, what can you say between these two? They just like a look is all they need. And fade to black. Another perfectly great way to end the movie.
Sure.
Peter Jackson's not done. We have Aragorn's coronation. You get a nice long sweeping shot of the White City. Viggo calls an audible and wants to sing here. This elvish song. I think it's a little goofy. I think a speech would have been okay. What do you think of? Am I being a hater here? Viggo singing?
I think so. Yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought
Billy Boyd was all right, but you just, you know. I like you a lot, Viggo, but I don't know. I don't know about the singing business. Can
men not sing? We're not going to allow real men to sing.
I just said Billy Boyd's got a beautiful singing voice, and it was very moving. This, I just don't know. But, you know, there is a lot of songs and poetry in Tolkien's book. Right. So, like, I do respect Viggo's impulse to honor that, even if it is a little goofy.
So this was a Viggo thing? He was like, yeah, Peter, I want to
sing this. I want to sing this thing. I want to do this like this elvish singing thing. And then there's a lot of like notes I got from the director's commentary, like Gandalf putting the crown on Aragorn's head was his last day of filming, of reshoots and everything, which is, you know, what a great way to go out. And all the characters, the main characters, like, you know, politely bowing, and then you get hit with one another. My all-time favorite shots of Liv Tyler coming from behind that, you know, banner, and you know, she's just perfect. Like, this is an idealized woman. As far as I will fight wars for her. I will I will slay orcs in combat for this version of Arwen. She's just it's a good thing I married a girl just like her. But this is some Princess Bride shit. Like the kiss, like I also like the fact that like it doesn't really feel earned, but like that, like it's like a Princess Bride like kiss of pure passion and joy at the end of this. And Elrond getting teary is kind of cringe, but I do love it because it's Hugo Weaving and it's fucking like one of the eldest, most badass elves of all, but he's still, he's going to miss his daughter, but he's happy for her. He's half human. He's like Spock. He's not like Legolas. He's not like weird about it. He's got a little bit of heart to him. And then, of course, the other scene that I'm going to get choked up if I count. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, it's got to be Frodo writing the letter. Yeah.
No, you son of a bitch.
Writing in the book.
My friends, you bow to no one.
Oh, okay.
What a great scene. What a great, like, God damn, it really hit me hard the first time I saw it, and it still gets me every single time. Yeah, I mean, this is Tolkien's story come full, like, the smallest people can make the biggest impact on the world.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
They did. And I believed that as a boy, and it explains a lot about how I try to live my life. Yeah. And then, you get the beginning of the Fourth Age. It's the fourth ending. Perfect place to end the movie. You don't need anything else. But we go back but this is the stuff I actually, like I said, I tried to critically think which ending could you separate. And you really bastardize Tolkien's work if you don't have scenes of military veterans going back to former life and it just being different.
Yeah.
Like it's
uneventful, right? It's not satisfying in the way that it was before.
Yeah, like, they just can't get into the fattest pumpkin contest and this guy's ribald jokes about that he's telling. Like, you can, like, like they're happy to be home. This is better than where they were, and they're still going to live their life. Sam takes a shot with Rosie here. But it's just this nod to the Scouring the Shire, these badass hobbits coming back with their grim faces and their bright steel, and what do they do with it? What Frodo says, you got the fifth ending is marriage of Sam and Rosie, Pippin catching the bouquet, probably the weakest of them, maybe, but like I like it. I like to see that happy ending. And then then it goes in for the bittersweet ending, which Frodo's saying like, yeah, this is all great, but like, how do you pick up the threads of your life when you know in your heart that there's no going back, that time can't mend all things, that some hurts go too deep. And Tolkien's answer is you sail to go live with the elves the rest of your life, where you can have some peace away from Middle Earth. So this ending is a little confusing for me. So I went and I read a little bit about the ending of the movie and the ending of the book, because I wasn't sure what I was seeing here. So when I first watched the ending of this, I'm thinking, okay, Frodo is writing in this book, and he's giving this book to Sam, and he's saying, I've got to go to the lands, the Undying Lands, whatever, because what we've been through together, our life together, is going to interfere with the future that you've got with Rosie and your children, and they're in the Shire, and I'm not willing to put you or your family through that. There's some connection they have, and what I eventually read about the ending in the book is that the wounds he suffered, like the physical wounds he suffered over the course of that journey, act up every year, at the like anniversary of the mountaintop or whatever it is, the weather top. Right. Especially that like almost spiritual wound he got from the Witch King's blade from the first movie, right to his heart.
Right. And so he's going to the lands of the Undying not to relieve Sam of the weight, the burden of the memories of their journey together, but rather to ease the pain that he's experiencing from the wound. Or to hopefully ease that.
Yeah, that he's not going to get, he's reached maximum psychological and physical recovery, and it's still not good enough. He's still, he's depressed. He's traumatized.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it takes it from, like, the book to me feels like a very physical problem that he has with the pain that comes with the wound. To me, in the movie, the ending was a very emotional ending where he's got the pain of living this life of adventure, becoming, this hero, and then much like Bilbo, not having the ability to go on adventures similar to it. Having that grand life sort of eclipsed by this small pedestrian hobbit life that he has here. And so he's going to look for something larger. I don't know which I'm supposed to really get, because it does mention something about Weathertop and 4 years now since Weathertop in the movie, but I didn't feel like they really filled in the blanks on what, like, the wound is coming back and hurting him and stuff.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, like, because this is, again, I think Tolkien's kind of grappling with what do you do after a war and what do you do with veterans. And some people are like, you know, and they had this thing in World War I, shell shock, which we now know is post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people never get better, and like it's a weird message as a former, like, I don't know what because essentially Frodo goes to heaven. Like, this is like, if you're it's like, this is almost like a literal suicide. He's going to sail and leave this earth and leave his friends behind and goes where he can't be hurt anymore. I don't know whether that's like if I'm a war veteran, which I'm not, and I'm reading this book and I get to the end, and I'm like, what is Tolkien telling me here? Is like Tolkien saying that there is a rich life that can be had by most people, that you can recover, but some people's wounds go so deep and they can't ever press on. And like, Jesus, if that's me, what do I do?
Yeah. Are you Sam or are you Frodo?
Right. And I don't think he's passing like judgment on it, because like Frodo, but like without the elvish heaven to go to, it's a little bit of a darker message. But that's the thing. It's like, Tolkien hated the idea that his book was Christian allegory, but it's not Christian allegory.
Sure.
It's different in a lot of important ways, but like when I think of the Lord of the Rings, I have to like take that spiritual component into me, because otherwise a lot of it just doesn't work. Like, like, hey, if you can't get over your traumas and you've tried hard for a bit, just blow your head off, go Ernest Hemingway. But
I think also, like, you have to ask yourself, am I Frodo or am I Sam, right? If you're coming back from war, like, Sam doesn't have the burden of going through those exact same experiences that Frodo does, right? Because Frodo was the one who had to do the deed, right? It's almost like, how horrific really are the things you've seen if you're Sam? They're nowhere near as horrific as the stuff you've seen if you're Frodo, right? And the stuff you felt,
being naked before the eye.
So there are people who definitely do come back, and so I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, right? Are you inclined to think that you're more of the Sam who can recover, who can find happiness after that, or are you the Frodo who's so scarred by it that the memory of it is too much?
And I think there's also like the idea that like Frodo saved the Shire, but not for himself. Like in a war, like like what does it mean to die in a war? Like the best case scenario, it's like you did it to protect your family, your city, your friends, your whatever group of humans, and you didn't you save something, but you don't save it for yourself. So I think there's like I said, like Tolkien went through some shit. He lived through World War I. He saw like his country being changed by that, and what it did to the countryside, and a lot of this is not happy, because from his experiences, he wasn't going to, like, I guess, sugarcoat it, and the idea that some wounds can't heal, both mental, spiritual, psychic, physical, I think is really powerful, and in his books, he able to give those people a happy ending because the elves can take their pain away. If and this is like an honor almost unheard of. Like the whole world got got broken when the last time a non-elf landed on the shores of Valinor. So now these people are being, and there's like in the appendixes, I think Gimli and Legolas also head west together, cementing their friendship eternally.
Bilbo gets to go there in the movie, right?
Bilbo in the books and the movie. All ring bearers essentially, or all of the fellowship. I don't know. Aragorn, he just dies. He lives like a couple hundred years, but he dies, and Arwen's real sad. Just what
Elrond said he was going to do, right?
Yeah, it's exactly like that's the thing. It's like an arrival situation. Like it's going to end in tears, Arwen. It's going to. You're going to die. He's going to die. Yeah. But was it worth it? But I don't know. I just think the way they handled this too, we haven't talked about the filmmaking, is like, you got the Cate Blanchett here, and I don't know. This made Tolkien heresy number 9, but I don't know what Cate Blanchett's giving me here. It's like Galadriel huffed some whippets before she gets on the boat, and like she's just privately amused at everything. I don't know.
Huh.
And Elrond's here, and her husband, and this everyone, and then everyone thinks it's Bilbo, but then everyone realizing it's interesting to watch their faces as they all individually realize that Frodo is going away too.
Yeah,
especially poor Sam.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've got a relationship that goes beyond friends. These two.
Yeah,
and this is a really cool what if that I got from the director's commentary. They filmed all of these scenes twice. The first day they did it, and he remarked about how like moving their performances were. Something went wrong with the equipment and everything was out of focus.
Oh shit.
So I had to call back like this, just grueling scenes, everybody weeping and hugging each other. I had to come do it again. He goes, it's the one thing that haunts me from this project is I really don't. He goes, I think it's good. I think it's really good, but I suspect it's not as good as our first takes. Huh. And it just really haunts me that we had this kind of like at the end of this magical thing and it kind of got fucked up. I hate to be the DP.
Yeah, no
that
kidding.
Day, holy shit. But this is a great. This ending is the best, and it's like it's got all the cathartic feelings, and Frodo kissing Sam, and then he becomes the thing that really buoys your spirit is like you can tell Frodo instantly becomes old Frodo as soon as he gets on the boat. Like the weight is left him, and like those he's back to old Frodo, and he's gonna be fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like these guys are sad, but he's like happy because he can finally live again. It's a nice moment.
And I think they're happy for him. Like when he smiles back at the camera.
Oh yeah,
they're smiling back at him. I think, yeah,
he's fucking earned it. And entrusting Sam with the book was another at the very end, like because that's the whole conceit of this. That these are historical documents that Professor Tolkien has found and laboriously transcribed.
Okay.
And this is it. This is a big lore moment. But then he sails into light, fades to white, and I think my final Tolkien heresy. I didn't need Sam, even though it is accurate to the book, and you get that last quote in. I don't know, and it's only 30 seconds long. But the seventh and final ending where he comes home and says, "Well, I'm back," and it's cute because that's actually Sean Astin's real daughter.
Oh, okay.
That was born during this whole production and all that kind of stuff, and she's like his little toddler, and it's nice, but like if you had to get rid of any ending, that's the one.
Yeah.
And then we got the end credits, which had these lovely charcoal drawings that Alan Lee did, all these concept art with I guess Peter Jackson. He commissioned Alan to do charcoal sketches of all the main cast, and then he used a Weta technology to blend it, like half of it's like their charcoal but it's also a little bit of their actual film performance, so it's kind of like this hyper realistic, but I fucking love it, and I have to watch the credits all the way through every single time I get to this part of it. And we talked about this before the podcast, you don't like the Annie Lennox Into the West.
Yeah, it's not doing it for me. I don't know, it feels a little cheesy, but
I like it. I don't know all the words, but I like singing it in the shower, just making up shit,
Sure.
Just belting out those big notes. And I mean, what else we got to say? We made it another solid 2. I don't think we're going to eclipse the Helm's Deep and the Two Towers, but
yeah, there wasn't enough technical stuff. We talked about too much technical up front. Should have saved it for this, then we could have hit that 3-hour mark.
And you know what? I saw only 23% of you like this movie the best, and I decided to mail it in.
Damn.
No, I know. I think that's like there's just not quite as much to talk about because a lot of it is just it's the same, except for they did it more as a little bit more refined. This felt like it's a victory lap of the thing. It gave you everything you needed to feel fulfilled. I mean, that's the thing, the memory I came out of this theater the first night is I just felt like that's exactly what I needed to see. That's exactly like the idea that this film would disappoint me was out of my mind, but like I like just like the way they did it was just right. And if anything, I think a lot of the extended scenes this feels like the most draggy of all the extended editions, even though again that's the way I choose to watch it. But I did, man. I think they
that's
need about 15 more minutes of the extended scenes in this, and then throw away all the rest.
God, it's already so long though. 320.
It is. It is. It is.
That's the thing. It's really hard to pull off what they pulled off. And I don't know that it had been done to that point.
Filming the whole trilogy all in one go.
Yeah, and sticking the landing the way they did. I think, like, look, they changed a lot from the book, and it's remarkable to me that Lord of the Rings fans, like the hardcore ones, really, maybe it's the totality of it, and like it's hard to say that, he didn't do it justice, even if the ending is so different. But yeah, like I think of shows that have tried to do this, movie trilogies that have tried to do this, like The Matrix doesn't get it right. Game of Thrones didn't get it right. Star Wars has certainly not gotten it right. Like,
sure.
God, it's such a high stakes thing. And it seems like Peter Jackson et al. Were able to just crush it. Just every Lord of the Rings fan I've talked to loves these movies.
I don't know how Peter Jackson, whether he just surrounded himself with friends and like professionals, or like through sheer force of his own enthusiasm and faith in the project, won people to his side. But like, it's so much fun watching these extra features because everyone is so proud. Like, from the guy who's, spends 3 years just making plastic rings and the chainmail that he spray paints, from that guy to the guy actually forging real swords, to the person doing the armor and the costuming, to the guy composing them. Everyone cared so much about this movie and wanted it to be the best thing they could do. And it was also like a national pride. This is like New Zealand's moonshot. Like, we're gonna fucking do this thing. No one believes in this. Like, that several studios passed us by. This is gonna be an entirely Kiwi project. They're like that. Like it's just lots of stories of like, the towns and everything kind of rallying around it. And it's like I said, this is the series that got me into like serious, like funny because it's a fantasy film, but it's the thing that got me seriously into thinking about this way of telling stories, because I grew up in an era where, like, if a book came out, it was going to suck as a movie. It just was going to, like, you'd hold on to individual moments, like, well, the still suits in Dune are pretty cool and the worms look good, but you just like expected it to be bad. And this and like the Marvel universe changed that to where, like, no, you actually can make something that's not the same as the original material. And I think that's the key thing. The reason the 99.9% of Tolkien fans are happy with this is because you can find fault, and I have, like, the Tolkien heresies, but how would you do it better? Like, maybe I want to do the Scouring the Shire, but like, even in the book, it feels like what the hell's happening? Like, we had the climax, we're going to have second climax. And it would make this movie 5.5 hours long if you did it right.
Yep.
Tom Bombadil doesn't, that's like, that was, Tolkien figuring things out about going from The Hobbit to The Lord of the Rings, and like, he probably, if he rewrote the thing, would discard it as well. It's just like hard to find, like, there's a couple things you can harp on, like Arwen or Eowyn and Aragorn is the big glaring one for me. But like, what would you have done better? And if you would have done, like, okay, you got your 5 minutes, it's perfect. The rest of the movie, could you have done the other 1,000 minutes as good as Peter Jackson did? And like, in most cases, I think honest fans are like, no, fuck no, you can't. This is like way better than we could have possibly imagined when we were like fantasy cast. Because it's not like, there was the Ralph Bashki, I can't remember how to pronounce that guy's name. There's an animated version of The Lord of the Rings that like blows. Right. It's got its moments, but like, I mean...
And that brings up, before we say goodbye to Lord of the Rings, Amazon has bought the rights to Lord of the Rings on television or streaming or whatever, and they're producing something. How much do you know about that project, and what do you think of that project as a big Lord of the Rings fan?
I am nervous because I think I don't know, because I've seen and read a bunch of things, because at first I thought it was going to be essentially like Tales from the Second Age, like, what happened in the prologue of Fellowship was essentially going to be that this franchise's climax, like the last war of elves and men, you know?
Yeah.
Because this war, say what you will, like there weren't, you know, elves kind of at Helm's Deep didn't happen in the book. This was all man's deal. Like elves are like, hey, we don't got the strength anymore. That's the other thing is like you're supposed to understand that like this was a world war, just like Tolkien fought. That like the reason dwarves and elves and other is because this was happening. Like the dwarves are being attacked in their mountains. Galadriel's hanging on to her forest realm with only her personal might and her ring of power that she's able to withstand. Like everything's being like you're being like what's happening in Minas Tirith is happening all over the world simultaneously. But then I heard that like, well, it's going to be these random tales from Silmarillion. Then I heard it was going to be like a reimagining of actually the Lord of the Rings, which feels like really stupid.
Ooh,
I don't know. I will say this. It's a fascinating world with a lot of really cool stories. And there's a lot to mine there, but it all comes down like Peter Jackson couldn't capture this magic twice.
He said
doing
he didn't
the
want
Hobbit,
to.
doing the Hobbit broke him. You know, and padding it out and making it bigger and more commercial and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, like to the extent that they stick to some of the cool stuff that's in the Silmarillion and some of the lost books and the tales and stuff that Tolkien's estate has kind of manicured throughout the years. Like it'll probably be pretty good. But I don't know. I really don't. I have. Yeah. It's they're filming it in New Zealand, so that's something, right?
We have, when we do the Baldies each year, which is our award show for the television that aired that year and the movies, we always have, or we have in the past had a category, biggest risk, highest reward, or biggest reward. This is that. This is what that category is made for, the Lord of the Rings, whatever it is on Amazon.
There's going to be a bunch next year, like Foundation, Dune, the Lord of the Rings project for Amazon. You know, the decision that apparently The Expanse is not going to do the last 3 books that we just found out yesterday. Like, there's a lot of risky, rewardy, various elements of that coming out these next few years. Marvel trying to, you know, rebuild their tattered empires from like, fucking Sherlock Holmes and an animatronic raccoon. Like, they're going to rebuild everything from that. Like, it's going to be a lot of risky stuff coming. The fact that, like, you know, just making big budget movies in the era of COVID. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm excited to check it out though. I hope it's good. We just have such an embarrassment of riches when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy right now. Like stuff that I never would imagine growing up, how cool and like serious people are taking it. And so like, as far as I'm like a belter, man. I'm on bonus time. I should. The Lord of the Rings should have got blown out the airlock and it survived. So like everything we get that's good from here on or is gravy. You know.
Sure.
Are we done now?
I guess.
Can we taste strawberries yet?
I taste them.
I want to thank once again Epic Mouthful for commissioning these last 2 movies. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work. I put a lot of work. I mean, part of it is like when you're commissioning something like this, you're getting like 18 years of us prepping and enjoying something, and some of those things fit a little bit better. But like I really appreciate the generosity of you optioning both of these films. The Bald Move community has really appreciated it. It's been a big hole kind of in our catalog. So really appreciate that support. Again, Epic Mouthful, if you want to check her out at Epic Mouthful on Instagram or Twitter, see some really good, delicious, beautiful food shots. I encourage you to do so. But what a present to give to the community and for us. But that's it. We went there and we're back again.
Yeah.
So this is the point in the podcast where I usually tell you what we're going to do next. And I honestly don't know what's going to come out next because we're about to hit the Christmas whirlwind. Christmas.baldmove.com if you want to see some stuff about what we're doing. But we got holiday movies coming out. We got a surprise one. We also got the holiday. We're going to do Lethal Weapon. There's the, I think, 20th anniversary of Tom Hanks' Castaway is coming out in one of these feeds. So, you know, if you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe to Bald Move Pulp and Prestige. So you have all the latest movies that go on. Plus, there's some first run movies. Wonder Woman's going to drop free to everybody, I guess, on Christmas. That's probably January. We'll probably talk about that.
Yeah, are
But
the
yeah,
commission slots full up for the year, or are we taking commissions? Because I mean,
I mean, it's too late to probably do a Christmas one if you give, but yeah, we actually, I think, are caught up to commission. So if you want to commission a podcast, go to support.baldmove.com. It's an easy step. You just pay us money and we do it.
those will probably come out in January-ish if anybody wants to do that. So
yeah. But thanks again for going on a 9-hour podcast journey with us. A special thanks again to Epic Mouthful, and we did it. We'll see you on the next project rather. And until then, I'm Aaron.
and I'm Jim.
See ya.